it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink and listen. Okay, this is a long one, so here's a little teaser to get you excited about what's to come. The fire should have killed him. That's what the papers said after the apartment building burned to the ground, after the screams stopped, after the bodies were carried out beneath a rain of ash. But some things don't die in the flames. Now, a terrified woman flees across the country with only her dog and the feeling that something is following her through the dark. Not just a man, no, something older, something hungry. Somewhere on the empty highways and ruined back roads, two strangers armed with impossible weapons are preparing for a war that was never meant for human eyes. Priests whisper of hell opening its gates. Demons walk wearing human skin. And deep within the ruins of an abandoned monastery, an ancient queen waits beside the fire that never truly went out. Tonight we explore The Burning Man, a brutal descent into possession, damnation, and the horrifying truth that some evils cannot be destroyed, only delayed. The Burning Man by Tim Sonsky. Part 1. Every sunrise brings with it a new kind of fire. Father Ramon Castillo remembered the dying words of his father 35 years after the old man had choked on his last breath. It wasn't the first time he'd chanted that proclamation. When Ramon was in high school in the 1980s, his family had taken up arms against the Peruvian government with an enraged torrent of radical militants who saw themselves as revolutionaries looking to overthrow what they saw as the rise of imperialistic practices in their homeland.
Every sunrise renews our cause and reignites our fire.
He would preach to his family as he hid their smuggled rifles underneath the kitchen floorboards. It was his solemn creed, his unfounded mantra. The words that convinced him that passion and commitment were all that were ever needed to rise above and win the day.
As long as a man has fire within him, he will reduce his enemies to ash. Every new day we live sees to reaffirm our fight is just.
The memory echoed painfully in Ramon's head like the shriek of a smoke alarm as he watched the dawn bloom into multiple vibrant colors, remembering the pitiful legacy of a man he'd long since outlived.
Man is not a vessel for fire, Dad,
he whispered bitterly as Hamlet would to the stubborn ghost that dogged him.
Only a vessel for toxins, pus, and poison.
As the secretly agnostic and very hungover Ramon climbed the church steps, he removed his brass keychain from his pocket. The rattling of his keys sparked the memory of shell casings cascading across the floor as his father held his ground against automatic weapons fire while he and his siblings cowered behind the couch in the next room. The man had died proclaiming an imagined victory, convinced he would stand up to witness another sunrise and revive the inferno that fueled his heart and soul. God did exist. It was only to watch us all burn under the magnifying glass he indiscriminately held above us. Father Ramon shut the door behind him and walked down the aisle between the rows of pews. His plan was to smoke a cigarillo and have a strong black coffee before throwing together a plagiarized sermon. Just then he heard a curtain being drawn across the confessional booth at the far end of the altar. He paused and glanced over in the direction of the intrusive noise. The overhead lights weren't even on yet, and most of the sanctum was still cast in dreary, cold shadow. Had the visiting priest arrived early and opened the side door to the public already? Perhaps with the intention of hearing an early morning confession.
Hello?
He called out, his cautious voice reverberating across the stained glass windows and vaulted ceilings. There came no response from within the confessional. He was about to shrug off the perceived intrusion and continue towards their sacristy when he detected the faintest hint of acrid smoke wafting through the still air. Was something on fire? He walked across the row of pews and approached the shrouded booth.
Is someone smoking in there?
He asked, not sure whether to be alarmed or upset. It didn't really smell much like tobacco at all, the more he considered it. It reminded him more of the harsh burn of rubber skidding across pavement, but whatever it was, it did seem to be originating from beyond the curtain. The drapery was pulled back half an inch, and he caught the glimpse of a figure, a man, kneeling within the booth, his face cast in shadow.
Father, I must unburden my soul.
A repentant voice emerged from within, muffled and haggard, as if crawling from deep under the earth. Father Castillo paused. He had no idea how the man had managed to enter the house of God without the Almighty seeming to notice. Perhaps the man had been hiding during the previous night when the doors were locked. He didn't like the possibilities that suggested about the stranger's character.
Do you need help, friend?
The priest asked, keeping his tone unthreatening and even.
Only the Lord's forgiveness,
Came the response from the hidden figure. Ramon straightened and made himself take a few calming breaths. The priest's section of the confessional booth had an actual door with a privacy lock. If the man was dangerous, he'd likely be safer within its confines than out in the open amongst the pews. Either way, best to get it over with quickly, and not try his patience any further, although he wished he'd been given the opportunity to have coffee before he had to interact with someone seeking spiritual aid. He entered his designated area of the booth and closed the door behind him. Was it warmer inside than usual? He removed his jacket and took his seat without bothering to turn on the overhead lights. From either side of the screen, the two would converse in darkness.
Tell me, what is your name, my son?
Marcus.
What do you have to confess, Marcus?
Father Castillo asked, trying his hardest to sound sincere.
I killed a child.
The man named Marcus responded with almost no hesitation. The flesh on the back of the priest's neck prickled, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. After an uncomfortable pause that betrayed the priest's faltering composure, he made himself respond.
Was it an accident? This child's death?
No, Father.
The tone of the voice changed from timid and shameful to bold and empowered, almost as though he was savoring a triumphant memory, and the temperature in the booth seemed to rise with every word the stranger uttered.
I was returning home, intoxicated and callous, behind the wheel of my car. As I pulled onto my street, I struck the child on the crosswalk. He became trapped under my car and was dragged several yards.
Father Castillo felt bile rise at the back of his throat, and he suddenly began to feel very lightheaded as the visions of that night, long since buried, threatened to overwhelm him.
That sounds like it was accidental, then.
The priest stammered defensively.
No, Father.
The voice spoke with deathly certainty.
It wasn't the collision that killed him. It was my actions after recognizing him. As he begged for aid, I removed my departed father's handgun from its hiding place in the trunk, wrapped it in a hand towel to silence the shot, and, knowing the boy's testimony would be the final straw that sent me to prison, I executed him.
Sweat ran down Ramon Castillo's temples as he shook in terror, despite the sweltering heat. The memory of the boy's hazel eyes as he pointed the gun making his heart twist. He stood quickly and attempted to exit the booth, but the latch had become searing hot, and his skin blistered as he cried out in pain.
I buried the body under my shed, ran the car into a tree to cover the damage, and put the handgun in the desk drawer next to my Bible. The same desk I sat behind as I comforted the boy's mother after Mass.
There was a moment of agonizing silence.
But what's even worse than my cowardice and my deceit was what I did with the body after I cleaned it, before the grave had even been dug.
No, I denounce you. I have repented.
Father Castillo nearly wept as he clawed at the walls, desperate to escape, knowing the Almighty's magnifying glass had finally found him.
That was years ago. How could you possibly know this? What do you want?
The screen melted off its frame and fell, smouldering into the priest's lap. But before he even began to acknowledge the pain, a pair of ominous glowing eyes met his gaze from the darkness across from him, red as though they were bleeding, and eternal like the night sky. An arm shot through the partition, and a demon hand encircled his throat, causing his skin to blacken and wither.
I am your final sunrise,
The man named Marcus declared.
and I wish to show you a new kind of fire.
July 17th, 2016. The lock on the motel room door had been broken when she arrived. Instead of requesting that it be repaired or that she be provided with a different room, she'd done something more prudent and daring. She'd fixed it herself and neglected to tell anyone. Now, that bit of defiance in the act of constructed vandalism had brought her valuable time as she opened the bathroom window around the back of the building and hurled her overnight bag out. The manager had attempted to walk in on her despite it being 6 in the morning. When he found the door secure, began pummeling it with profanities and fists alike, demanding she open up immediately. Fortunately for her, she'd been awake and dressed for a half hour already, was in the process of making good her escape. Also fortunately, it seemed as though the man hadn't had the forethought to bring his keys, predicting easy access to her room and perhaps a glimpse of whatever she wore or didn't wear to bed. The little Scottish terrier barked his disapproval of the situation as she lowered him out onto the top of her overnight bag, clinging to his leash as she followed him, legs first out of the window and into a maze of weeds and compost nearly as unpleasant as the burly man accosting her door. The dog barked again as she attempted to lead him through an acrid puddle of stagnant swamp water, and her sneakers sank into the wet earth.
Quiet, Cosmo.
She hissed, though she doubted very much her pursuer could hear the dog's sharp protests over his own thunderous hammering. She'd foreseen this happening. The stolen credit card she'd presented at the front desk likely had enough funds attached to pass any kind of preliminary inspection, but after only a day it seemed to have been frozen and flagged. Corrine silently celebrated parking as far from the manager's office as possible as she opened her car door, threw her bag into the passenger footwell, deposited Cosmo into the front seat, and gunned the engine. The manager saw her as she backed her car over the grass median and floored it towards the parking lot exit. His gut bounced like gelatin as he made a half-hearted attempt to chase after her on foot. She was long gone before he could even make it to the vending machine. She sighed, the rush of her minor victory already collapsing under the weight of her larger situation. She'd hoped that she'd have more time to catch up on sleep and plan her next move after so much time on the road. Instead, it seemed she was destined for another few days of naps in her car, gas station coffee, and absolutely no place to shower. Cosmo tilted his head sideways at her, as if obtaining food superseded all else right then. After an hour, she stopped at a gas station to top off her tank and check her oil. After purchasing a snack for herself and her beleaguered pup, with what little cash she had left, she was making her way back to her car when she noticed a Louisiana state trooper pull into the lot. She deliberately averted a gaze, but felt her pace quicken. She hoped whoever the badge was, he hadn't received a notification about a disgruntled motel manager a couple of towns over. Quickly lowering herself into the driver's seat, she discreetly glanced into the rearview mirror as she closed her door. The car's occupant hadn't exited his cruiser and was casually staring in her direction behind his dark glasses.
Act casual, Cosmo. He's checking our plate.
She muttered to her co-pilot as she turned the key in the ignition. Reaching into the back seat, she retrieved her dog's leash and attached it to his collar, wrapping the other end around the passenger side overhead hand grip. In case they did get stopped and she was instructed to exit the vehicle, The last thing she wanted was for Cosmo to attempt to follow her and run loose along the highway. Putting the car into gear, she pulled out of her parking space and made to nonchalantly re-enter the flow of traffic, comfortably aware that the officer was still looking her way. As soon as she navigated herself back onto the highway, the cruiser's roof lights blazed into life, though the wail of the siren didn't accompany them. Corinne floored it, desperate to believe that those lights weren't about her, knowing in her gut that choosing to stop and refuel so soon after the motel had been careless of her. Now she was likely going to be the first person ever arrested for repairing a motel room door. Cosmo remained indifferent to the whole situation, rummaging around in the snack bag looking for treats, seemingly unbothered by their sudden extreme change in speed. In almost no time at all, the cruiser was directly behind her, lights flashing like targeted attacks, still closing in as silent as a shark. Corinne bit her lip. There was no chance of her outrunning him, so she decided to take a calculated risk and pull her car over. She rationalized that leading the cops on a high-speed chase would land her in far more trouble than whatever she was already in. She brought her car to a compliant stop on the right-hand side of the highway, put herself in park, and rested her hands on the wheel.
Cosmo, look at me.
She stared at her pet, authority in her voice.
Do not try to bite this guy. Just do what you do best. Sit there and look adorable and dumb, and let's hope this guy is a dog lover.
The cop sat in his car for a long moment before lazily extricating himself from inside the shell of his department-issued chariot and sauntered over to her driver's window. His sunglasses were still on, and the haughty drawl of his accent left no question in her mind as to how this guy likely felt about the previous night's convention.
Morning.
The officer let the word escape from his lips slowly, drawn out like a string of mucus.
I'm Officer Nathaniel Dixon, and your plates belong to a 2001 Ford Ranger.
Corinne didn't respond to his non-question, which also wasn't quite an accusation. She just concentrated on keeping her face locked in a neutral position and stared at her reflection in the shine of his glasses.
You have your license and registration with you?
He asked, as though bored, giving the back seat a quick glance through the window.
No,
Corinne said coolly, but not rudely.
and the car isn't mine, but I didn't steal it. It belongs to my ex, and he's locked up.
It was partially true. The car had initially been purchased in her ex's name, with her listed as the secondary. When he'd defaulted on the payments, he'd surrendered the car to her. After they'd broken up, they'd fallen out of contact. The last she had heard of him, he'd been arrested after a particularly brutal bar fight where the barkeep had lost an incisor. She had no idea if he'd been sentenced, but the point was, he was an easy scapegoat to use as she feigned ignorance.
So you're saying, when he got locked up, your license and registration were in his back pocket?
Officer Dixon replied sarcastically.
My license is still in the pair of pants I was wearing the last time he hit me and tore him off.
She tried. And this part was a lie, but it fit the narrative. Straining to keep her poker face intact, she stared back into the man's lenses and forced herself to commit. Dixon's expression didn't soften. If anything, her words seemed to amuse him. The faintest trace of a smirk curled up the side of his face like a weed.
Ex's name and personal info?
He asked in a tone that was almost a cackle. She gave it without hesitation or protest, while the cop jotted down notes in his pad. When he asked for hers next, she gave the name of an attorney's daughter she knew from up north who looked a bit like her, hoping if he ran the name it may encourage him to proceed with kid gloves. Unless he saw through her ruse immediately. Again, calculated risk.
So you're implying you weren't aware that the plates were stolen?
I'm implying I don't really care. You can take the plates and impound the car if you need to. I'll just hitch.
What if I told you these plates on this car were only reported stolen a few days ago? From only a few towns over at that. And what if I also told you that a young woman with a stolen credit card matching your description hauled ass out of the weary Traveler Motel in a vehicle identical to this one a little over an hour ago?
He leaned in closer to her, his breath suggesting there was likely a flask hidden under the seat of his cruiser.
How would you respond then?
I'd say that's a terrible name for a motel.
She shrugged. Nathaniel Dixon chuckled before taking it upon himself to unlock her car using the switch on her doorframe and then wrenching it open harder than he needed to. Cosmo barked his opposition to the man's unprofessionalism.
Get the fuck out.
He hissed. Corinne took a deep breath and unbuckled her seatbelt. She knew the difference between cops who would only put their hands on you if they had to, and the ones who very much wanted to. This one was definitely the latter, and she thought it best to comply so as not to give him an excuse. After she stood up, she closed the car door behind her and set her hands on the roof of the car without prompting. Dixon immediately began running his hands up and down her sides, in theory to search her for weapons, even though he hadn't asked her beforehand if she was carrying any.
Listen, Missy.
His face was so close to hers, his voice seemed to invade her ears like a centipede crawling into its hole.
We both know you're lying through your teeth. Maybe you are running from your ex-boyfriend. Maybe you're not. But you're definitely running from something. And in doing so, you're making waves. Normally, I wouldn't care. But now you've made it my problem. That frustrates me.
He ran his hands up under her shirt and then down the back of her pants, between her skin and underclothes.
I didn't become a cop for this minor infraction bullshit. Taking you in would be more trouble than it's worth. So I'm gonna say this once. Keep driving until this state is outside the time zone. Because if I see you again, I'll definitely be putting you in cuffs. But I won't be transporting you anywhere. Get the picture?
He pressed her face down into the roof of her car as he dug his hand deeper down into her shorts and felt up her inner thigh with unflinching, perverse relish, completely unbothered by the passing traffic. Corinne shivered with white-hot rage, suppressing the overwhelming urge to spin around and bite down into his face like a feral beast.
I got it!
She snapped. He let her go, pulling the handful of cash he'd received as change from the gas station out of her pocket.
And please remember, if you choose to file a complaint, my name is Officer Nathaniel Buford Dixon. Make sure to wear something sexy in court.
He tilted his head forward as he counted the bills, and for the first time Corinne noticed the scarring around one of his eyes behind the frames. Quickly getting back into the car, she slammed the door and floored it before the man could grab at her again. She was so livid she nearly considered backing up and running him over with her car, but she knew as far as the bigger picture was concerned, she was in the clear. The cop didn't know her real name and didn't have the car's real plate number. He had her ex's info, but she very much doubted that he would follow up on it. Even if he did, her ex had no way of knowing where she was going. As far as the mysterious man who Marcus had warned her about was concerned, she was still in the wind. She allowed herself the faintest of smirks as Cosmo, seeming to sense her distress, began licking at her hand. Based on the injured eye the man had so carefully tried to hide, it looked like someone had put the bastard in his place at some point. Probably another woman he'd tried to touch. Wherever that woman was, at that moment, she was Corinne's fucking hero. Dixon pressed his fingers under his nose and inhaled deeply as he returned to his throne back inside the patrol car. He smirked at the hint of moisture he thought he could detect on his fingertips. That back-talking harlot had enjoyed it. His radio burped into life as dispatch questioned him as to the status of his roadside stop. Irritated at the interruption, he unhooked the handset from the dash and pressed the button to respond.
All's well.
He strained to keep his voice professional.
It wasn't the suspect from the motel. Tell Carl to stop clogging your phone lines with inconsequential bullshit. Whoever that woman was, she's long gone by now.
He replaced the handset without another word. Taking a carefully portioned swig from his flask, he was about to turn the car around and head back the way he'd come when he paused. Pulling his cell phone from the glove compartment, he placed a call and reclined his seat a fraction of an inch. After 2 rings, a slightly flustered, very brusque voice inquired.
Manetto,
Howdy, Gemma. It's Nate.
what do you want, Dixon?
You remember that discreet APB you put out a few weeks ago on that soldier? After he escaped from the hospital, he reported he may be in the company of a woman and a dog. What kind of dog was it?
He heard the woman shifting through papers.
White Scottish Terrier.
I'm pretty sure I just found her.
Dixon ran his tongue over his teeth in amusement. He gave the young woman's description to his contact, including what he'd noticed about the car and the dog.
The names don't match, but I'm convinced she was lying anyway. No severely burned soldier with her, though she was sure in a hurry to get away from something.
You didn't arrest her?
Negative. I could have for petty theft, but she would have been out by supper time.
Doesn't matter. She's not the target, and I doubt she knows where Marcus is. I never really believed they were traveling together anyway.
I know you don't value my input, Special Agent Minato, but I really think in this case you're just Jackie Kennedy chasing brain matter. This rogue soldier you're looking for is almost definitely deceased. And even if he isn't, no way you're gonna find him on your own without agency help. Personal vendettas don't often yield rich harvests.
Says the man still hunting for the bounty hunter who scarred him. I appreciate the information, and I'll deposit the usual sum into your account, but I promise, your opinion means less to me than a spa date and a septic tank.
Well, I know how fond you are about getting up close and personal with little shitholes, Special Agent. Fuck you very much.
Dixon snarled back at her and was about to disconnect when a male voice came on the line. Its owner was unknown to him, and the intensity behind his almost otherworldly calm made his stomach flip uncomfortably.
Nathaniel Dixon, I know you put your hands on that young woman during the traffic stop. Every vulgarity you utter and perversion you engage in are being tallied, and before long you will be required to answer for them. Speak to Miss Manetto in such a manner again, and I will prioritize accompanying you personally to that final judgment.
Dixon nearly roared back into the phone that he wasn't afraid of whatever internal affairs investigation Manetto or anybody else had opened on him. But his words caught in his throat. His body camera hadn't been on during his interaction with that woman. Neither had his microphone. How could this mysterious stranger possibly know about him putting his hands on her? Had the young woman called whoever this was immediately after?
Who is this?
He demanded, hoping he sounded fierce, but knowing he more likely sounded unnerved.
Think on your sins. There are no second chances beyond the grave.
The line disconnected. In a rented office several states away, disgraced former ATF agent Gemma Manetto tossed her cell phone aside and stared up at the 2 men standing on the far side of her obscenely cluttered desk.
What in the hell was that? I thought you never spoke.
She glowered at the taller of the 2, pale as a marble statue and just as expressive. The man turned and retrieved his leather jacket from the coat rack before exiting the room without muttering a word. Unfazed by the man's lack of candor, Manetto turned to the second man.
I don't need his help handling Dixon or anyone else for that matter. He needs to learn about boundaries.
She huffed indignantly, not entirely convinced the pale man was out of earshot. The second man gave an unconcerned shrug and continued scooping his lunch out of the paper carton with his chopsticks. Despite his disheveled, almost reckless demeanor, unkempt red hair and defiant, prickly stubble, this half of the pair was much easier for Manetto to relate to.
You have to understand, Virgil is very much used to being in the know. The idea of privacy and professional pride are completely foreign to him. Try not to take it personally.
Manetto absent-mindedly ran her fingers through her short, mousy hair before catching a glimpse of her visibly haggard self in the mirror. She had an enormous purple birthmark splattered across her neck that always gave the appearance that her throat had been sliced and she was bleeding out. Even after a lifetime of living with it, there was always that split-second moment of panic whenever she saw her reflection when she thought she was dying. Whatever kind of beauty she could have had that wasn't undone by the blood of discolored tissue on her throat had been rotted away over time by her insecurities and constant episodes of self-loathing. Digging through her purse for anti-anxiety meds, she desperately sought to change the subject.
How exactly did you two meet again?
He saved my life, pulled me out of an especially deep, dark place.
The woman snorted at his deliberate vagueness.
Look, Dante, I appreciate that there's a history between you two that I'll likely never understand. I also appreciate you being the only one to stand by me since I lost my badge. But as much as I hate Dixon's guts, he's probably right. Marcus is almost certainly dead.
Dante shook his head slowly, as if in reluctant sorrow.
He's not.
How can you possibly know that?
Because if he was dead, there'd be one less star in the night sky. Instead, it's the other stars that are fading.
Manetto snorted and massaged her temples.
Ugh. Oh, for fuck's sake. I'm never gonna get my badge back. I don't know what I was thinking, agreeing to partner myself with you two.
Dante stood and pushed in his chair.
Are we any worse than the other men that you choose to ally yourself with? Like this Officer Dixon?
Don't do that. Dixon repulses me, but at least I understand him. And to locate a man like Marcus, I need informants who can maintain an orbit around the black holes. You and your albino friend acting all clairvoyant and fearless won't produce results nearly as well as one scumbag willing to sink into the swamp.
I understand his usefulness, but make sure not to glorify a man for successfully wielding his vices like a hammer against a nail, especially when, more often than not, that hammer is bludgeoning an innocent.
Gemma Manetto poured another energy drink directly into her cold coffee.
Sure thing, Dante.
She conceded in mock appreciation and held up her mug as if to toast him.
And the girl is not the target, but she's the only lead we have. Virgil and I are going to find her.
Manetto gave him an exasperated look.
There is absolutely no evidence that she has been in contact with Marcus since the night of the fire. It's highly unlikely she'll be able to lead you to him.
Probably not, but she's the only person from his inner circle who's still alive. Maybe he'll come looking for her.
The man removed a crucifix on a chain from around his neck and set it down on the desk in front of her.
In the meantime, leave your cell phone on, and keep this in your pocket.
The woman held up the silver trinket and raised an eyebrow.
Why? Will it keep me safe?
Dante smirked at her as he fastened his gun belt around his waist and tapped the holstered weapon with his hand.
Not in the way this will, but it will attract some good angels. Their presence will bring you a sense of comfort and inner peace.
Don't you need angels more than me if you're off to fight demons?
Dante's wily smirk spread into a full grin that reeked of poetic irony.
I've already got one.
The arched gate to the cemetery was designed to look like a set of angelic wings. Virgil hated them. Like so many other shallow human creations on this miserable plane of existence, it reeked of false sincerity. Something meant to represent the grandeur of the Eternals, reduced to flakes of rust after years of indifference and neglect. The mortals were embarrassingly short-sighted, full of praise but weak of will. Small wonder so many of them were lost to the abyss. After forcing the gates open with an ear-splitting wail, he marched across the ill-manicured lawn to a headstone bearing the name Filippo Argenti. Grasping it firmly on either side with his bare hands, he wrenched it from the earth like he was removing a dead tooth and extracted one end of a chain hidden in the indentation beneath the mud. That was where Dante found him as the pale man continued pulling at the chain until it yielded a steel casket from deep within the earth. Dante chuckled as he watched his collaborator break the seal on the coffin and open the lid, knowing full well it would have taken 10 men and a bulldozer several hours to exhume that box.
Tired of idling?
The red-haired man asked as he approached. The rain had started to fall gently, with all the signs of a more aggressive storm approaching on the horizon. Dante noticed while Virgil's clothing showed signs of dampness as the rain began to intensify, his hair and flesh were still bone dry.
The weak and uncertain idle and await salvation. The wise choose to earn theirs.
The pale man responded. He removed his broadsword from within the casket, along with numerous handguns and other holy weapons that dated as far back as the First Crusade. He shifted the Spear of Destiny that the two of them had located in the desert, the inhuman skull still impaled upon its tip, and removed a wooden stake about the size of a screwdriver and slid it into his boot. Dante recognized it as the largest remaining piece of the true cross. He hadn't even been aware that Virgil managed to free it from its prison under the Vatican.
I told Minetto we're going hunting. If your hunch about Marcus no longer being tethered to either the saved or the damned is true, he's the closest thing to something like us we've ever faced. I thought we were the only anomalies. How do you banish a demon that hell doesn't claim?
The damned have placed a claim on him.
Virgil clarified as he slammed the casket lid shut.
But unlike them, he doesn't have a preordained place in the underworld to return to. He didn't originate from there, so they can't simply retract the cord.
Then where did he originate from?
Dante asked, the full weight of this revelation starting to worry him.
I don't know. He's the first unnamed demon to emerge since before Lucifer's rebellion, and his actions suggest he's not adhering to any predetermined plan. He appears to be casting souls already destined for torment down into the pit. Demons usually target those who are mostly pure, ones they can corrupt, whose salvations are still in question.
So he's not acting in accordance to either side. Kind of like us.
The difference is, even though we've been disavowed, we have no intention of usurping anyone.
Virgil stared upwards into the heavens, as if he could see whatever lay beyond the suffocating layer of dark clouds.
The last Eternal who attempted to act independently like this was trying to prove something.
What was that?
That he could be his own god.
Safely hidden beneath the anonymity of his white hood, the young man grinned wickedly as his brethren gathered around the bonfire to hear the good word proclaimed by their incorruptible leader. He promised that the signs were clear. A new age was upon them, and the unwavering principles of birthright and the master race they all chose to live by would soon become common practice again. There was no mistaking it. They were about to re-emerge stronger than ever. What a glorious time it was to be alive. The young man watched as the Grand Master indicated that the giant wooden cross be set ablaze. He began to preach from the Old Testament as several men carried the massive structure closer to the flame.
I fucking love fire.
The young man slurred as he elbowed the silent man standing beside him.
I used to burn animals alive as a kid. I'd burn most politicians too if I could. And their families. They don't deserve this country.
The man remained silent beneath his white robes.
You new here?
The young man tried to initiate a conversation again, hoping to hear his sentiments acknowledged and reciprocated.
You sure ain't said much.
I've been here longer than any of you.
The man stated as the cross finally began to ignite.
And I'll be here long after.
Huh?
The young man uttered stupidly, confused at the sudden intense smell of sulfur and burnt meat clawing its way up under his hood and invading his senses. The man turned to face him.
You see, I burn things as well.
His arm shot out and grabbed a chunk of flesh behind the young man's left ear. Digging his claws into the soft flesh where the base of the skull met the neck, he tore the mask away, bringing with it most of the skin from the man's face. Blood cascaded down his white robes as he screamed in unfathomable agony. But before his brethren could fully comprehend what had happened, the silent man's clothing burst into flame, and he sprang upon them, tearing out throats with his teeth, gouging out eyes with his claws, and setting them ablaze to writhe and burn, dying slowly, completely unaware of what they'd summoned. One man managed to fire off 2 rounds with his shotgun, but Marcus flew at him with incalculable speed, the buckshot unable to harm him even if it had made contact. He plunged the weapon's barrel down the man's throat, shattering teeth and rupturing the windpipe before incinerating him. The Grand Master attempted to run, abandoning his flock, but shadowy demon hands erupted from the tainted earth below and held him in place by his legs as their messiah, robed in blood-red flame, stalked the unholy arbiter of the gathering.
Good work, boys.
Marcus acknowledged the creatures below. He rammed his fist through the man's chest and wrenched out the still beating heart.
Not one of you thought to bow to me. Such unworthy disciples.
The clan leader's final moments were spent choking on his own heart as Marcus roared with laughter and set him ablaze as well. The former man turned fiery deity spread his arms wide and laughed as the trees surrounding the clearing all began to burn. The earth was scorched, every body mutilated and unrecognizable, and the stench of death being seized by the wind to be distributed for miles like acid rain. The young man who had spoken first wept from the only eye he had left as he clung to his obliterated face. Marcus approached him slowly, walking with great meaningful strides, like a conqueror, through the wreckage of the former regime. He was about to set the man alight when he paused. This man had something contained within his mind, a recent memory involving someone who was known to the mortal man Marcus had once been. The name Corrine echoed through his mind, and Marcus felt the faintest hint of anticipation and remorse for the first time since he'd shared his earthly bonds. He probed the young man's mind and discovered he'd once been her lover, and what's more, had been questioned about her earlier that very day by the Louisiana State Police. Something about a car. Corrine. He felt the stirrings of an obligation unfulfilled. While bound to no morality other than his own, a feeling that could almost be described as longing had settled into his disturbed subconscious, and he knew he had a duty to himself to find this woman. Confronting her could be what finally determined the fate of the last remnants of humanity he was still carrying. He grabbed the man by his collar and lifted him into the air.
We all love fire down below.
Searing crimson flames erupted from Marcus's throat as he bit down into the young man's skull. Part 2. The forest was burning, its heat casting a crimson glow upon the shimmering night sky, almost giving the impression that the heavens were bleeding. As the small child stood on her front porch, she clung tightly to her stuffed koala as she watched over a dozen firefighters across the street begin to empty out of their trucks, the wail of the sirens making her teeth vibrate. Her parents had told her to wait right there as they gathered the last of their essentials, preparing to evacuate the area lest the blaze overtake their home like waves upon the sand. As the child fidgeted, watching the first responders set up a perimeter, she almost didn't notice the towering figure emerge from the shadows amongst the trees. The stranger stomped across the pavement with long, vicious strides, approaching her home as though intent on confrontation. At first she assumed it to be just another fireman, but when she caught sight of his glowing red eyes and the scorched, blackened footprints left upon the concrete, her stomach sank, and she took a terrified step backwards. The red-eyed man marched across the grass, leaving smoking craters in the topsoil, and seemed ready to climb the steps to where she cowered, when he paused and knelt upon one knee. Running his fingers through the earth of her mother's flower bed, he extracted a handful of ash where she knew they'd recently buried the cremated remains of her deceased grandfather. The shadowy man raised the ashes to his mouth and gently blew upon them, creating a soft orange glow of newborn embers. After giving the blaze a few moments to breathe, he carefully returned it to the earth like a parent would set a babe in a cradle. Raising himself back to his full height, he stared at the child with fiery eyes, seeming to stare through her, past the precious memories stored within her mind, the tender emotions residing deep inside her heart, and directly into the wispy semblance of morality forming on the blank slate of her soul.
Pray I forget your face.
When he spoke, tendrils of smoke spilled out from between his teeth. Turning away from her, he marched across the lawn and picked up her father's chainsaw where it sat in the bed of his work truck. Before she could comprehend why he would need such a thing, his malicious, booming laughter assaulted her like the rumbling of a volcano threatening to erupt. She pressed her hands to her ears and closed her eyes tight, refusing to look up again until her parents were there beside her, gently gathering her up as they made their way to the car to evacuate. By then, the fiery man was gone. She was so badly shaken she couldn't find the words to explain to her parents the horror of what had just transpired moments before. As they backed out of the driveway, none of them noticed the thin wisp of smoke that was rising from the spot in the garden where the nightmarish creature had knelt, or that one of the fire engines had suddenly disappeared.
Well, I guess now it's just a matter of time before one of us eats the other.
Green glanced down at her pup with a sad smirk right before she slammed the hood on her car's smoking engine. Cosmo looked up at her with a calm, optimistic face, seemingly undaunted by the severity of their situation. Since having the last of her cash stolen during their traffic stop the previous day, Green hadn't seen the point in stopping her car until the tank was dry. After a brief pause under a highway overpass to discreetly wash every inch of her body where Dixon had touched her with sanitizing wipes, she taxed the engine until it had overheated to the point of a meltdown, committing a very loud, metallic ritual suicide before she could finish burning the fuel.
No phone, no cash, no food, no problem.
Green chuckled to herself as she slung her backpack over her shoulder and gently tugged on Cosmo's leash to get him to follow.
Come on, boy. Let's hope if my thumb can't get anyone to stop, my ass will.
The dog pattered along obediently by her side as she flipped open the map with one hand and awkwardly attempted to pinpoint her location. While it was possible a Good Samaritan would stop to offer them a ride, she wasn't willing to bet on it and was determined to have an alternative plan in case the grey sky overhead decided to lift its leg and piss on her.
Okay, looks like there's an RV park of some kind a few miles away. Let's make for that. Maybe we'll find a place to lay low for a while.
She kept her tone upbeat and hopeful for the sake of the dog, but on the inside she was suddenly very afraid. If she was still in danger, she had no idea where she could go that would be safe, or if anyone she encountered could be trusted. On the other hand, if the threat was gone, so were all her resources. There was no way to return to the life she once had. Green bit her lip in a moment of harsh self-reflection and spoke to her dog again.
Well, my life wasn't exactly a Fortune 500 company anyway. In fact, it was pretty much just like the car. Running on fumes with no destination.
Cosmo woofed in agreement.
Guess this is the kind of roundhouse kick to the head I needed to finally start taking my future seriously.
Attempting to fold the map one-handed and avoid stepping on her dog, she almost didn't notice the shadowy figure watching her from the trees on the opposite side of the road. A cold chill sank into her gut, but she forced herself not to break stride or stare in its direction. She kept walking like she hadn't noticed anything. If Cosmo sensed something, he seemed to be taking her lead. He had given no indication he was aware of another presence lurking nearby. For another 10 minutes, Corinne continued to march on in silence, every half-minute risking a quick glance across the divider to check and see if their stalker was keeping pace, which he was. The stirrings of genuine panic began to infect her thoughts. Whoever or whatever the thing was, it was drifting from tree to tree like a shadow, moving with such practiced stealth that it left no crunch of footsteps or rustle of undergrowth in its wake. It didn't seem large enough to be a man, but its movements were too precise and humanoid to be any type of forest animal. All she could make out in her periphery was a dark silhouette that refused to step out into the open and reveal itself, moving like smoke and matching her every footfall. She paused as if to readjust her backpack. The shadow paused with her. Too terrified to look directly at it for fear she may see a pair of predatory eyes staring back at her, she contemplated leaving the road and heading up into the trees to hide, when the sound of an approaching engine caught her attention. Turning quickly, she pulled in the slack on Cosmo's leash and held out her thumb. An older man on a motorcycle with a sidecar attachment skidded to a halt beside her and gave her a brown-toothed grin.
"Is that your car back there, darling?"
Green gave a half-hearted nod, glancing over the man's shoulder, attempting to locate the phantom across the way, but it seemed to have dissolved back into the trees.
It used to be.
"You need a lift?"
She glanced into the sidecar and nearly gagged in revulsion. Crammed deep into the footwell was the severed head of a buck, the antlers jutting out precariously like bars. The eyes were missing, and the tongue was hanging bloated and free from the mouth like a slimy tendril. Corinne felt a clash of panicked emotions erupt inside her mind. As much as she didn't want to trust this man, she was afraid of what may happen if he left her behind and the dark ghost reappeared.
I don't think there's enough room, and even if there was, that smells like refried ass.
"Well, I know a place where you can shower after."
He gave her a smirk that could poison a well, and she could almost hear the blood rushing down to his lower extremities over the sound of the engine. She was about to tell him to go suck his own scrotum when her blood froze. The shadow outline was back, and this time she saw the eyes.
You have a helmet?
The man removed the protective cap from his own head and handed it to her. She lifted up her dog and gave him a kiss on his tiny head before setting him in the sidecar, trying the leash to the seatbelt. The pup whined, clearly unhappy about being there.
Sorry, boy.
Taking a moment to fasten the helmet strap tightly under her chin, she paused, as if about to change her mind, and then took a deep breath as though fully committing to the choice. She looked him in the eye and smiled.
Do you like Roadhead?
"Huh?"
She smashed her reinforced skull directly into the man's face, and she heard the nose crunch like a pine cone. Braying like a wounded camel, the man fell backward off the seat and hit the pavement, screaming profanities and clutching his face as blood stained his shirt like a watercolor painting. Corinne leapt aboard the bike, put it into gear and floored it. The bike shot forward about 5 yards, and then she hit the brakes. Reaching over, she grabbed the buck's head by one of the antlers and tossed it out. The man was still on his back when she took off again, drowning out his anguished cries with the roar of the departing engine. She didn't look back to see if the dark spectre was following, afraid that if those pale, cold eyes found her again, they'd turn her insides to stone. Agent Gemma Manetto spun the cylinder of her revolver as she sat on the pull-out bed in the middle of her drab office. She remembered the bomb that had been hidden not so subtly in the child's sandbox at the daycare center. The way she'd tried to keep the teacher calm as she instructed her to have the children form a line and evacuate into the parking lot on the far side of the building. The way she'd second-guessed herself. Pointing the barrel of the gun into her chest, she squeezed the trigger. There was a sharp, intense snap of metal as the hammer fell, but no bullet was discharged. She spun the cylinder again and pressed the business end under her chin. Another squeeze, another snap. The bomb squad had been on its way, All she'd needed to do was clear the area and wait. She thought she had. When the teacher informed her there was a child missing, she'd returned to the playground to see a small boy playing alone under the slide. She'd just scooped him up in her arms when the explosion blinded her. At the hospital, they told her that she'd never regained consciousness after the blast, so she couldn't have remembered the crater, or the screams, or the sight of the child's smoking body. But she did. She remembered it all. Minato stood and walked across the room to the wall mirror. She looked at the splattered purple pattern the birthmark made across her neck and mocked cutting her throat with her finger. No relief there. But there was another way. She spun the cylinder again, put it to her temple and squeezed. It had taken her a full year to recover from her injuries. After being able to walk on her own again, she'd looked over the full report. She'd failed to properly secure the area. For some unknown reason, the boy had either missed or ignored the rest of the playgroup leaving. During countless dark nights in physical therapy, she'd begged the silence around her for the answer as to why she'd survived instead of the child. According to the file, she'd been dead when the paramedics reached her. After a few attempts, they'd managed to restart her heart, stabilize her, and get her into the ambulance. She cursed them for that, instead wishing that they'd dedicated that effort to the one lying beside her. Dante and Virgil had found her on the edge of the rooftop of her apartment building, contemplating the drop, and returned her to her home. Setting the gun down upon her nightstand, she picked up her cell phone and looked at the number she'd never had the courage to dial. She made to press the call button, changed her mind, and picked up the gun again.
The wish of some, the relief of many.
Placing the mouth of the cannon back under her chin and squeezing the trigger. No sound followed. She glanced down at the weapon. The silver crucifix Dante had given her right before he left was hanging on a chain around her neck. When she'd placed the gun against her chest and pointed it upwards to aim under her head, the hammer had failed to fall because the hanging cross had jammed it. Disassembling the gun, she discovered that the one bullet in the cylinder she'd been betting her life with was lined up with the barrel. It would have been the shot that killed her, but the charm had prevented it. Shocked, exasperated, and more than a little spooked, she set the revolver back down.
All right, fine, I'll call him.
Retrieving her cell phone, she selected the number and pressed the call button, this time without any hesitation. After a few distant rings, a quiet voice came from the far end of the line.
Good evening, ma'am. This is former agent Gemma Minetto.
She paused to take a breath, hoping her newfound courage wouldn't abandon her.
I was the one with your son when the bomb went off. I was the one who couldn't save him.
Cosmo waddled across the parking lot enthusiastically, clearly happy to be free from the loud metal animal that had been the borrowed motorcycle. Attached to the other end of his leash, an equally relieved Corrine let her dog lead her to the vending machines in the motel parking lot. Her pet seemed to recognize by now that those large upright boxes yielded treats if given attention.
I'm not sure all this human food is good for you.
She held her dog up to the window of the machine with a smirk, as if waiting for him to make his decision. Inside the deer-head man's seat, she'd found a hidden compartment with $40 in cash, just enough to keep her and her dog fed until they reached the state line and had to abandon the bike.
Ugh, going to have to give you a bath soon. I don't think that was the first severed animal head he kept in there.
Cosmo woofed his consent as she selected a sandwich. She set him back down on the sidewalk. After removing her purchase from the machine, she straightened back up and noticed in the reflection of the glass the red-haired man standing behind her. He was leaning against the railing of the stairs, hands in his pockets, staring directly at her.
All right, Cosmo, time to get back to the guys.
She made sure her voice was loud enough for him to hear.
Let's hope they're finished with their Krav Maga training.
As she gently but firmly directed her dog to follow her, a second man suddenly appeared from the shadows in front of her. His height and build reminded her of the Eiffel Tower. Elegant, towering and sturdy. His hair was so blonde it was nearly white, yet even that was a bit of a color compared to the man's skin, which was pale white like the surface of the moon. Despite the sun being gone, he wore dark glasses that hid any warmth behind his eyes, like an eclipse. Everything about the man's posture and appearance gave the impression of a concealed threat. Cosmo made an unhappy sound as Corinne reached in her pocket for the second thing she'd found hidden in the motorcycle. She pulled the snub-nosed revolver from its hiding place and pointed it at the pale man's face. From the angle she was standing, she couldn't tell whether the second man had moved any closer.
Hello, Corinne.
Hold it, Judge Doom. You and Roger Rabbit are gonna take several large fucking steps back and let me walk away, or else you get a JFK facelift.
The pale man didn't react to her threat, and the fact that she couldn't see exactly where he was looking unnerved her.
Your fortitude is commendable, but your judgment is clouded, and your reaction overzealous. We are searching for someone who is known to you. Tell me, Corinne, have you heard of the Burning Man?
Her entire body tensed as she realized he must be referring to Marcus. What else could he have possibly meant, given how her old neighbor had destroyed half their apartment complex with fire? This was probably the man who Marcus had warned her about. She tried to stall for time. The longer they stood there, the more likely it was someone would see them.
Either show me a badge or fuck off. My dog needs to eat.
He is alive, Corinne, though he no longer exists as you knew him.
She opened her mouth, but couldn't think of a response that would be equal parts denial, threat, and indifference. His words had shaken her, and she didn't know if her voice would hide the shock that suddenly gripped her. How could Marcus still be alive? The man behind her spoke for the first time.
You know, Virgil, for someone who represents centuries of uniting people and spreading the good word, you aren't really much for tactful conversation.
The red-haired man took a few careful steps forward, and she tried to monitor him in her peripheral vision without taking her eyes off the pale man.
Hi, Corinne. I'm Dante. And this is Virgil. Is there anything I can say that will get you to lower that?
Sure. Tell me you're leaving.
She glanced down at Cosmo and noticed him cautiously moving towards the red-haired man, his tiny nose twitching. That's when she realized he'd produced a dog treat from somewhere in his leather jacket.
Cosmo, heal!
The dog didn't listen and instead inhaled the treat like a furry black hole.
Just breaking the ice. You two must be hungry,
Dante said as he patted the pup's head gently.
You hurt my dog, I will break you in half, rip out your spine, and read it out loud.
Dante straightened up.
The man you knew as Marcus has experienced let's say a transformation. He looks a bit different now, and you may not recognize him. Have you seen anything unusual lately?
Corinne's eyelids fluttered and she slowly lowered the gun.
Unusual as in dark and ghostly?
Maybe.
Something was following me earlier today. Something shadowy, with pale eyes.
Did you smell any smoke? Or brimstone?
No.
Then we have a problem.
Why?
Because that's what I smell right now.
Virgil pulled off his glasses, revealing pitch black eyes.
He's close.
Corinne turned back to look at the taller man and noticed the dark pits under his brow.
Whoa, what the?
She raised the gun to his face while taking 2 frantic steps back.
Are we doing this again?
Dante gently took hold of Corinne's wrist and redirected the gun away from his partner.
We've got to go.
He began to lead her across the parking lot while Cosmo followed along obediently behind.
Get her to the van.
Virgil stepped down off the sidewalk and drew his Desert Eagle handgun from underneath his trench coat, keeping watch while Dante escorted her to their armored transport. Corinne kept peering back over her shoulder at the pale man.
What's wrong with his eyes?
His father gave them to him.
Dante slipped the revolver from her hand and disengaged the hammer, averting a potential misfire.
I don't smell anything.
Oh, you will. My senses are a bit enhanced when it comes to fiery entities.
Dante opened the passenger side door, scooped up Cosmo and placed the dog in Corinne's arms before helping her into the cab.
This feels like a kidnapping.
Kidnapping? That's a funny way to say rescue.
Dante slammed the door and turned back to his partner.
Virgil, let's go.
The black-eyed man held his gun down by his leg, still as a stone, silent as a sundial.
He's close.
Okay, but we can't engage him here. There's too many people. If he's coming for the girl, we have to lure him away.
Too late for that.
From inside the cab, Corinne drew Cosmo up in her arms protectively as she glanced around the perimeter of the parking lot. That's when she noticed the shadowy form on the rooftop of the motel.
Hey!
She slapped the window to alert Dante and his friend. But before she could indicate where they needed to look, she smelled the brimstone.
Let's at least form a perimeter around the van.
As Dante pulled out his own handgun, two people attempted to exit their room and cross the parking lot, but he waved them back inside.
Stay in your room. Lock the door.
He turned as Corinne started slapping the van window. Virgil took half a step forward in response, and a fire engine plowed directly into him. Dante was nearly thrown off his feet by the intense rush of motion directly past him, and from inside the van, Corinne screamed. The cab of the fire truck was engulfed in flames, and from the driver's side, a blazing figure emerged, eyes searching, the heat from his boots scorching the pavement beneath him. Dante raised his weapon and unloaded the clip of the fiery entity. But to no avail, as the bullets seemed to evaporate upon impact. The red-haired man dropped his gun, pulled the cross he wore on his chain out from under his shirt, kissed it quickly, and drew a curved silver blade from his belt. The grip fastened in a crucifix shape to resemble Christ's final hour of suffering upon Calvary.
Marcus, if you still answer to that name, this girl and this realm are under my protection. You have much to answer for.
This realm was never yours to defend, Cloth Man. It's a desolate plain of withered wheat, where nothing of substance grows. I'm here to burn it all, to spite those who care for it.
Marcus raised a bulky object in one hand and with his other wrenched the power cord attached to it. The roar of a chainsaw cut through the night, the blade a fiery orange color, the teeth shooting tongues of red magma into the air, as if he wielded a weaponized volcano. Dante bit his lip.
Okay.
Marcus launched himself forward and swung his shrieking blade at the man. Dante threw himself sideways as the chainsaw gouged a chunk out of the side of his armored van. The heat was so intense, his eyes watered and his breath caught in his throat. Rolling underneath the van to the far side, he scrambled to his feet, wrenched open the driver's side door, and slapped a button on the dashboard. Water rained down from 6 hidden outlets upon the roof, shielding the entire outside of the van with a protective layer that Marcus could not break.
It's holy water.
Dante answered Corinne's unspoken question, and he climbed into the van and slammed the door, turning the key in the ignition.
What is that thing?
Pissed off.
Marcus snarled as he attempted to cut into the van again and prevent their escape, but the blessed water minimized the damage and weakened his flames. As Dante floored the gas pedal, Marcus was shot twice from behind. Virgil, his clothes blackened and charred, had dragged himself out from under the smoking fire engine and had raised his Desert Eagle. The gun smoldered like a forge hammer upon the anvil. Marcus spat an expletive and spun back towards the pale man, fiery red eyes meeting the inky black. Tossing his jacket and handgun to the side, Virgil revealed the broadsword he carried on his back. Wrenching the giant weapon free from its scabbard, he sprayed holy water across the blade from a flask he carried at his hip. he chanted in Latin as he approached the burning man.
Pater noster, qui es in celes, sanctificetur nomen tuum.
Your hollow prayers will not strengthen you, favored son. I'm the only deity listening.
There are no deities here.
The blazing chainsaw connected with the broadsword. Dante drove the van a mile down the road and pulled over, Corinne clutching Cosmo so hard the dog was flailing his stubby legs in protest. Dante raised his hand to feel his face, wincing at the welts that were already forming on his neck and cheek thanks to the burns.
Look, I need you to keep driving. In 6 miles, there's a church, the parish of Francis D. Sales. Get inside and stay there. I'm going back to help Virgil.
What? Isn't he dead?
No way. He's survived a lot worse than being crushed by a Hellfire truck.
Then why does he need your help?
Because your friend Marcus may actually be worse than Hellfire.
Dante pulled a shotgun from a case behind the driver's seat and started loading rounds into it.
Wait, that thing was Marcus?
I'm afraid so.
Is he after me?
Not for much longer. And don't press any of those buttons.
As Dante made to climb out of the cab, Corinne grabbed his arm.
Wait!
She pointed out the dashboard at the pale-eyed spectre watching them from underneath a streetlight.
Do you see that?
Dante narrowed his eyes and paused.
Wait here.
He left the safety of the van and cocked the shotgun. Raising the silver patriarch blade in front of him, he marched forward.
Okay, we see you, which means you want us to know that you're there. Identify yourself.
Shadowy form seemed to shimmer a moment, like light reflecting on a pond surface, as if in response to him.
Dante?
Green shook in terror back inside the van. The man didn't respond as he took 3 more steps closer to the entity.
Wait. I know you.
Green screamed as the shotgun blasted and Dante was lifted into the air. Virgil and Marcus dueled across the highway, the ear-splitting wail of metal on metal echoing for miles as their weapons connected. Every car in the motel parking lot was ablaze, and the building was being evacuated by the staff. Marcus spewed a fireball from his mouth, but Virgil deflected it with his blade, and it projected the flames into the night sky. He lowered the sword and stared back into the red eyes, searching for any trace of a soul.
What is your true name? Certainly not Marcus. Who is the one who targeted him as a host?
The holy light no longer shines through you, favored son. Before long, you will fear me as you once did him.
Virgil smiled.
I've been burned by worse than you.
Then I shall reopen your scars.
Marcus charged the pale man, wielding the chainsaw like a reaper's scythe. Virgil raised the broadsword and caught the teeth of his opponent's weapon. Sparks flew in the air in every direction, setting the grass on either side of the roadway alight. Unable to crack the broadsword thanks to the holy water, Marcus attempted to cut the hands off his adversary's arms, but was unable to find an opening. Virgil spun, pivoting the giant blade with far more grace and skill than any mortal man could have managed. He swung the sword in a wide arc, intending to take off the head of his rival, but the burning man seemed to anticipate his every strike.
What do you want with the woman?
To kill her in front of you.
From underneath the earth, several pairs of fiery hands grabbed Virgil around the ankles and held him in place.
Until then, you will wait here and despair.
Unable to move, Virgil clutched the sword blade and held it up in front of him like a staff. Marcus drove the chainsaw down with his full strength until Virgil's arms buckled and the saw slashed a gash across his face. broadsword hit the pavement with a clatter, but before Marcus could deal a blow that would decapitate the pale man, Virgil pulled the wooden stake from his boot and planted it in the burning man's throat. Despite being engulfed in unholy flame, the shard of the true cross would not burn. Marcus roared in pain and dropped his mechanized weapon. He struck Virgil's face so hard the man's head smashed against the concrete, shattering it like glass. The demonic hands encircled Virgil's prone form, preventing him from moving. Marcus heaved a labored breath and attempted to remove the wooden fragment from his neck. Every time he wrapped his hand around it, his fingers crumbled into ash, just to reform as he jerked his hand away.
I shall return for you.
Following the path Corinne had taken in the van, it only took Marcus a few short minutes to close the distance. The van was abandoned in the center of the street. Neither the red-haired man nor Corinne were anywhere to be found. Marcus paused, a scent in the air he did not recognize. There was another entity in play, and it had reached her first. He threw his head back and roared. Part 3. When she inhaled, all she could taste was soil and ash.
Dante!
She attempted to cry out, but the word caught in her throat like a rusty nail. The world around her was the blackest of pitch, and all she could hear was the rushing of frenzied blood in her ears as her heart hammered against her ribs like a piston. Raising her arms shakily above her, Corinne realized she was lying on her back in soggy dirt. But the darkness encasing her wasn't merely the absence of sunlight. It was the crushing envelopment of stone and earth. She was underground. What had happened? Had she been buried alive?
Cosmo!
She coughed, suddenly desperate to feel her dog's warm tongue against her hand to reassure her she wasn't completely alone, lost forever in an immeasurable void that was neither life or death. In response to her cry, she heard the faintest of scuttling from somewhere in the darkness. It wasn't the sound a dog would make. It was the sound of something large raking the earth beneath its claws as it maneuvered its bulk on unsteady appendages in her direction. As much as she yearned for the faintest glimmer of light, she suddenly froze, terrified such a glow would bring with it the eyes of the thing somewhere buried down here with her, with its claws not far behind. She bit down on her lip to prevent herself from screaming and clenched her hands into panicked fists. If this was how she died, she prayed it wouldn't take long. If she was already dead, well, then hell would take some getting used to. The armored truck sat idling in the middle of the highway, doors open, engine running, barely noticed by the first responders who drove past it. Sirens wailing, intent on getting to the fire that was engulfing the small roadside motel not far away. The first frantic 911 calls had spoken of a man burning alive while wielding a chainsaw, and a pale man attempting to kill him with what was described as a Braveheart-sized medieval sword. Most of the emergency workers presumed the witnesses were observing a brawl between two very dangerous but two very ordinary men, and the fire had warped their perception. They may have reconsidered that view if any of them had paused to question the pale man riding the motorcycle with sidecar attachment in the opposite direction with the headlights off. As Virgil hit the brakes and skidded to a stop behind the van, he pulled his broadsword from the sidecar and raised it with both hands, expecting a furious, fiery attack at any moment.
Dante!
He called hoarsely, an inky black blood running down the side of his face from where Marcus had shattered the concrete using the pale man's skull as a wrecking ball. He examined the van carefully, checking inside, underneath, and all around it for any sign of his partner or the girl. After determining the van was undamaged, he threw his sword into the back compartment and opened the case behind the driver's seat. The shotgun was missing. Settling for a fully loaded Taurus Magnum revolver instead, he left the van and took a few careful steps into the shadows, gun up and ready, anticipating a target. Not long after Marcus had stunned him and left him immobilized thanks to the inhuman grip of his hidden minions, Virgil had felt their resolve weaken as somewhere their master grew distracted and irate. He was able to break free. Irate was good. That meant Marcus didn't have Dante and the girl. But if he hadn't managed to intercept them, where had they disappeared to? Taking another few steps, he noticed the missing shotgun upon the ground. Scooping it up nimbly, he checked the rounds and determined only one shell had been fired. Something else had been here. Something that neither himself nor Marcus had anticipated. As he turned and made his way back to the van, he paused and pointed the Taurus at something emerging from the woods. A small white dog, clearly traumatized and desperate to escape this particular slice of nowhere, padded over to him and stood shaking at his feet, whining pitifully. He lowered his handgun. This was the dog the girl Corinne had been with at the motel when they'd found her not half an hour ago.
Well, what happened?
He asked, not really expecting an answer. He was clairvoyant enough to feel the emotional turbulence from the echoes of the animal's recent memories, but not nearly well enough to draw any conclusions. Something had been here, waiting for them, and it had forcibly taken them. But if not to aid Marcus, then to what end? He picked up the dog and turned to deposit it in the back seat next to his scalding hot blade, then thought better of it and set it in the passenger seat instead. Climbed into the driver's seat and pulled the burner phone out of the glove compartment, calling the only number listed in the contacts.
Yeah?
Gemma Manetto's voice seemed stronger and calmer than the last time he'd heard it.
I need backup. Dante and the girl were taken.
There was a pause.
Are they alive?
Virgil said nothing. And after a heartbeat,
Where am I meeting you?
Can't say yet. Follow the van's tracker. Drive fast.
That cross that Dante gave me.
she said, her voice soft and uncertain.
Impacted a certain decision you made.
Another heartbeat.
I'm on my way.
Virgil hung up the phone. He looked over at Cosmo and recalled the spot in hell where he'd witnessed dog killers being tormented.
If they only knew, your kind would be more revered.
He muttered as he put the van into drive and floored it down the dark highway. Cosmo didn't respond. The rain was just starting to fall as Charlotte took a seat on the front doorsteps for her 15-minute break. Setting a tub of stale popcorn to one side, she pulled out her phone and began scrolling idly through the meaningless jargon all adolescents her age sought to find some semblance of meaning in. Not that she couldn't have done so inside behind the counter had she chosen. It was a joke that the movie theater was still open. The building was decaying around them, with mold growing under the auditorium seats and the projectors and screens so far out of date they couldn't screen anything remotely close to high definition, though they still advertised it. Barely pulling in enough revenue to keep the lights on, most of the staff had mentally checked out and only continued to work because they either lacked the ability or ambition to find another job. Absent-mindedly shoving the popcorn into her mouth, she glanced up as she heard a torrent of awful noise from somewhere deep in the trees across the parking lot. She wondered if some coyotes had gotten into a scrap with a black bear, though she doubted it. Whatever the mystery things were out there clawing at each other sounded much, much bigger. After a moment, her mind wandered as she popped in her earbuds to drown out the ruckus and found a pointless video to watch. She'd almost finished it when she glanced up, noticing a dark figure stomping out of the woods, dragging what could have been a rope or a belt behind it. Unable to see him very well as he kept to where the shadows enveloped him, she noticed that his clothing seemed to be releasing a thin haze of smoke. As he walked, it lingered in the air behind him like the misty tail of a phantom dragon.
Were you in an accident or something?
She called out, only half interested. She pulled out her earbuds and raised her phone to record the man as he paused and changed course, making his way towards her.
Hey, you can't smoke inside the theater.
She added, half joking, eyes still on him through her phone camera as he walked up to within a few feet of her.
Oh, yuck!
She gagged as the stench of burning meat enveloped her, and She backed away as she felt the heat.
Did you get gang raped by toxic wildfire?
Charlotte raised her phone higher to get a better look at the man, his eyes 2 pinpoints of red in his sunken, dark face.
Where's the cathedral?
The smoking man asked in a sudden, hissing bark. When he spoke, more smoke escaped from between his black teeth.
The what? Hold still.
Charlotte took 3 pictures of him with her camera phone. The dark man leaned forward.
The temple of worship.
Gross. Back up, dude.
She said as she turned her phone back into video recorder mode.
Do you mean that old monastery? They're tearing it down to make room for cell phone towers. It's back there in the woods.
She pointed to an opening in the trees where a gravel road had been built to accommodate the demolition vehicles. The dark man turned in the direction she casually indicated. He looked back at her.
When I return, you will burn, writhing in agony under my foot as I flay your smoking sinews from charred bones.
Whoa, I just got that threat on camera, asshole.
Charlotte spat defiantly as the man turned and made his way towards the path in the trees. She stood up and called after him, still recording until he was out of sight.
My dad's a lawyer. We'll fuck you up if any of my clothes are ruined because of your putrid stench.
She sat back down and muttered curses under her breath, then rewound the video to make sure it had all been recorded. It wasn't until her break was over and she had watched the video straight through for the 4th time that she noticed what she thought had been a belt the man was dragging actually looked more like the blackened spine of a human skeleton, with the broken skull gripped firmly in his withered hand. She wondered if the video would be flagged if she decided to post it on YouTube. Green was able to keep herself from screaming until she saw the eyes, although she couldn't exactly explain how. They seemed even darker than the pitch black of their surroundings. It was like the cavern they were trapped in was dark because of the absence of light, and those pits were where all the light was ensnared and killed. Her scream was raspy and weak, and she attempted to scramble away as the thing let out a high-pitched wail, like the roar of a kind of demonic mountain cat. She cried out in desperation as she felt something cold and slimy wrapping around her ankle. The empty maw she assumed were eyes hovered above her, and she felt a blast of freezing, rancid air upon her face and neck that reminded her of bloated corpses. She was about to scream again when the creature was jolted back and away from her, and the grip on her ankle was broken. She heard the rapid, piercing sound of what sounded like a knife through flesh, and then a loud screech and a wet snap of something breaking that was definitely supposed to remain intact. A heavy thud sounded beside her as something with a bulk much bigger than her own hit the floor. Green shrieked as she scrambled backwards and slammed against the unforgiving bulk of the cavern's wall.
Best not to shout so loud. We're close enough to the furnace to get burned.
Dante,
Green inhaled sharply, blindly reaching her arms out.
where are we? What was that thing?
What thing? The one that I just killed? Or the one that grabbed us on the surface?
The girl paused.
Both? Where are you?
I'm here.
She felt a calloused hand slick with sticky blood grab hers. She didn't even care. With nothing but infinite cold darkness surrounding her, any proffered hand, no matter how tainted, was a relief to acquire.
We're in the vestibule, or rather the doorstep of the vestibule. Living beings can't venture beyond this point. This is the realm of the soul. We were sort of deposited here to suffocate to death before being escorted in a spiritual sense. That thing was sent here to, accelerate the process.
Green heard a wet crunch as something fleshy was kicked.
How did we get here? No. More importantly, how do we get out?
Her voice shook. She was having a very difficult time holding back panicked tears.
Back up on the road, do you remember that shimmering figure you spotted? She sent us here. She could have killed us outright, But then there would have been no guarantee our souls would have ended up where she wanted them to go. It's safer to set a trap than to hunt with a single bullet. As far as how we leave, well, we can't. The best that we can hope for is that Virgil changes her mind, and she summons us back.
Dante, I can't be here. I don't even believe in that stuff. Whatever you and Marcus and Black-Eyed Guy are involved in doesn't involve me. Please, I can't die down here in the dark. I just want my dog.
What someone believes or doesn't believe has never really mattered down here. You think you're afraid? Not nearly as much as I am. I've been here before. I know exactly what's waiting for us. I've seen thousands dragged in chains across the threshold, screaming that they didn't believe in this, or that they're sorry, or that they aren't supposed to be here. If you press your ear to the wall, you can hear them. All they ever do is scream and burn, pleading for impossible things like mercy, forgiveness, salvation. But do you want to know the one thing no one ever screams down here?
Corinne felt her tears pool in her lap as she squeezed Dante's hand, not sure if she feared the silence more than she feared his answer. After an agonizing moment, she asked,
What does no one scream?
I regret nothing.
The doors of the fragile monastery were shattered inward as the fiery demon renegade leapt down off the ground floor into the pit that had once been the rectory's secret basement, where the bodies had been buried after they'd been defiled, where very different types of prayers had been invoked than those in the pews one story above.
Was this one of yours?
Marcus screamed into the darkness as he held up the horned skull of the creature he'd dragged behind him through the dirt, its misshapen spine rattling like a snake's tail.
Any demon spawned from the Malbulge is no longer my equal. Challenge me yourself.
He bellowed, his enraged voice echoing like a thunderclap that promises the coming of a remorseless black storm. The voice that responded seemed, in contrast, like smooth nectar poured from the lips of a golden serpent.
If only the Light-Bearer could see you now, Samael. As you challenge the All-Father's might, you seek to emulate his actions, unworthy though you have always been.
A graceful feminine figure with piercing pale eyes crawled forward across the dirt between the shallow graves of the forgotten corpses, like a centipede would scuttle across the husks of withered maggots. Her shimmering form stood upright and elongated into what could almost be described as a woman, equally as alluring to the senses as she was revolting. Her reptilian skin was a sickly greenish grey, with 4 blackened horns rising from the crown of her head like skewers. Upon her swollen breasts, her nipples leaked pus from savage cuts, and a fanged mouth, 3 times the size of the one above her chin, sat agape upon her navel, catching the poisoned droplets upon its tongue as they fell. From her back, 4 great scorpion legs sprouted, holding her monstrous body aloft as the priests had once done with the Ark of the Covenant centuries before.
Lilith.
Marcus laughed and shattered the demon underling's skull beneath his fingers.
How desperate must the Light-Bearer be to release you from between his jagged thighs? Does his failed reign require me to grovel in order to finally gain purchase on the mortal plane above? He wears his chains as ornaments, satisfied to pretend to rule below instead of having to serve above. As long as he has allowed his ants to burn.
The demon known as Lilith took 4 massive scorpion-toed steps towards him, her soulless gaze unwavering, her soft voice hellish yet hypnotizing.
He has no knowledge of your treachery, though the lost souls you continue to reap prematurely have not gone unnoticed. Surrender yourself to me, and I shall allow you to torment the girl's soul as you find most pleasing, without the Light-Bearer's oversight.
I shall not serve either above or below. This mortal plane has sat dormant, unconquered, unmolested for too long. It is mine alone to set ablaze. Release the girl to me, and my perceived disloyalty will burden you no more.
In the ground beneath Marcus's feet, dozens of mangled, demonic arms clawed their way above the surface, searching for a victim to ensnare, just as they'd done before upon the highway to Virgil, the favored son. Lilith tossed her slimy wet hair and smiled for the first time since she'd revealed her true form.
Just as it was written, Samael, I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine.
Marcus roared in fury as the arms grabbed him, digging their claws into his burning flesh, dragging him downwards towards the abyss. Charlotte glanced up from her phone as she heard something wail in the direction of the monastery, and for the first time that evening she felt uneasy about sitting outside all alone. Her break had long since ended, and she had no reason to still be sitting there, but her rebellious, bitter attitude overpowered her discomfort. It wasn't like her absence had been noticed. Fuck Bill, the pompous bullfrog. She'd make him come out and find her if he wanted to keep pretending this place was worth the effort.
Girl.
Christ!
Charlotte jumped and dropped her phone, overturning her popcorn bucket as she reflexively dove forward to rescue it. He was nearly as weird-looking as the previous guy. This one was just as tall but as pale as a stick of chalk, with a lean frame that showcased an impressive compact muscle mass that reminded her of the handsome Olympic athletes of her wet dreams. If only his eyes weren't so dark.
Where did the other man go?
The pale man asked her, bluntly. She noticed the massive handgun on his belt and the bruises on the side of his face.
The one that smelled worse than dumpster meat? He went to the monastery, down that gravel path.
She pointed across the lot towards the shadows. The pale man glanced in that direction before turning to look back at her.
Go inside, lock the doors. Tell those inside to take shelter. Pray if you feel your voice will be heard. Tonight, no soul is protected from on high.
Are you a black guy kid?
Charlotte asked, everything the pale man had just instructed her to do flying completely over her head.
Do I look like a kid?
The man blinked humorlessly before making his way towards the park. Agent Gemma Manetto was still a good hour away from where Dante's van was broadcasting its location.
Fucking Louisiana traffic.
She hissed between clenched teeth as she navigated her way through the late-night highway travelers, most of whom seemed indifferent to the efforts of her sad little car to pass them. Realizing she wasn't going to have enough fuel to get to wherever she needed to go to provide backup for her partners, she pulled off the next exit and haphazardly swerved across 3 lanes of traffic to pull into the closest gas station. Not even bothering to turn off the car, she climbed out of the driver's seat and dug in her pockets until she found her credit card and inserted it into the reader. As she began to fuel her car, she adjusted the collar on her turtleneck sweater, rolling it up her neck to her chin to shield her against the sticky wet breeze, when she dislodged the silver crucifix Dante had given her. It fell freely to tap against her chest, swinging from its chain that was fastened securely around her neck. The reminder of it being there seemed both an affront and a comfort to her, given how a few hours before it had literally prevented her from ending her life after she'd managed finally to work up the nerve. She leaned against her car and lifted up the cross in her fingers to examine it more closely, inspecting it for any warps or cracks that may have occurred when the gun hammer had fallen and trapped it, preventing the weapon from discharging.
Divine intervention or dumb luck. Maybe it doesn't matter which. For better or worse, I'm still here.
She mumbled to herself. A voice came from her left side.
Hey, could I bum a smoke?
She turned to see a tall, disheveled man in an overcoat leaning against the hood of the car. He seemed nonchalant with his lazy drawl and unfocused gaze, but Manetto immediately felt her stomach coil into a cold knot as she recognized the face.
Jasper Womack.
She whispered, a low-level career criminal wanted in 8 states, and, more alarming, known for assaulting and robbing women on the side of the road.
Sorry?
The man's tone shifted ever so slightly from casual to accusatory, though his eyes didn't flinch. Manetto glanced behind her quickly. A gun was in its holster on the passenger seat right next to her cell phone. There was no one else within shouting distance.
I don't smoke,
Manetto said quickly, trying to locate the casual authority she'd used to polish her voice when she'd been an active ATF agent.
Neither does my husband. He'll be back any minute.
The man drew a handgun from his waistband.
Nice try. But you definitely said something else. Something my mother used to call me. And you aren't her.
He pointed the gun at her neck.
For fuck's sake.
Manetto hissed impatiently between her clenched teeth, and then her eyes darted over the man's shoulder in sudden surprise.
Oh shit.
Jasper Womack half turned to look behind him as Manetto dove sideways into the car and grabbed for her weapon.
Fuck!
Jasper snapped as he corrected his stance and trained his gun on her through the windshield. Manetto raised her weapon and fired a shot through the bottom of the holster at the exact moment Jasper pulled the trigger. 2 separate bullet holes exploded into existence as the projectiles passed through the windshield in opposite directions. Manetto's bullet ricocheted off Jasper's gun, causing him to curse in pain as the weapon was knocked from his hand.
Motherfucker!
He spat furiously as he held his damaged wrist in his free hand. He leaned forward to peer through the damaged windshield. The woman inside wasn't moving, and there was a splatter of something red across her neck. He maneuvered himself around the hood to the driver's side door to go through the woman's pockets when he noticed the ATF badge on her hip.
Oh, fucking great!
He hissed in aggravated panic as he abandoned both the car and his gun and took off running down the street. The gas pump clicked automatically as the tank finished filling up. Manetto didn't move. Marcus tore the arms off of his former demonic foot soldiers like he was pulling weeds up by the roots. Their screams of agony were barely audible over the burning man's own furious bellows. Lilith attacked, spearing Marcus through the chest with one of her scorpion legs, but the man spewed a fireball from deep within his blistered lungs, flames erupting all over her like magma upon a cold wasteland. The demon woman snarled, but did not scream. Marcus wrenched himself free and grabbed at a chain hanging from the rafters above. Wrenching it free with a mighty crack that shook the building's foundations, he spun the lump of stone and iron at the far end of the chain like a mace and smashed it directly into the putrid second mouth upon the woman's navel. Lilith was thrown backwards into the far wall, but before Marcus had a chance to draw the mace back by the chain, the fanged mouth crunched down on the makeshift weapon, splintering it to dust.
Ah, you are but one of 1,000 failed usurpers, Samael. Anyone cast down behind him into the pit is forever doomed to wallow in his shadow.
Lilith shot forward at Marcus again, her long serpent tongue puncturing through one of his flaming eyes and coiling down his neck between his ribs.
You will never be all-powerful as long as you shackle yourself to a human soul.
Marcus reached down his own throat and wrenched enough of Lilith's tongue free to bite down upon it and sever it, freeing him from her grip.
Once the girl's soul is extinguished, any echoes of the human's former life will be lost. And I will be the first to escape from this pit as my own master. And then you shall revere me as you once did him.
Marcus grabbed 2 chunks of concrete from the building's foundation, tearing them away as easy as if they were wet clay, and charged at the demon woman, pummeling her face and chest with his reinforced fists like stone boxing gloves. Lilith wrapped her legs around Marcus's waist, and her fanged second mouth bit deep into his torso, attempting to break his spine and devour him. Lilith buried her claws into his neck.
The only reverence you shall receive will be from the ash you choke upon as you burn upon his altar for all eternity.
Marcus felt his back begin to fold backwards at an unnatural angle. He was losing his grip, slowly being pulled into the unholy maw that was Lilith's womb.
Whore!
He screamed as her scorpion legs pierced his shoulders and knees. Lilith intensified her hold on him, so close to breaking his back, staring down into his blazing eyes with her cold, pale ones. And then a broadsword impaled her directly between her swollen breasts. Lilith screamed in agony and fell backwards upon the dirt as the holy weapon paralyzed her. Marcus fell sideways to land on a shallow grave, his flames slowly starting to die as he fought to regain his feet. Virgil leapt down into the hole from the floor above and fired his magnum into Lilith's face and eyes until the gun was empty.
You can drag him back to hell for all I care, but unless you want to explain to your dark overlord how you left his realm unsanctioned just to be scarred by a holy blade, I want Dante and the girl returned to this plane, alive.
Lilith's mutilated face bled pus and black leeches crawled from her eye sockets as she laughed a pitiful little cackle that betrayed more fear than defiance.
Ever content to live amongst the animals, Virgil, once favored son? Shunned by both the starry heavens and the kingdom of fire, never again to be worthy of a place amongst the brethren?
Better to live amongst the animals than live beneath their shit.
Virgil climbed upon her chest and twisted the hilt of the broadsword. Lilith screamed in agony.
Now, release them.
There was a burst of dust and gravel, and Dante and Corinne were slowly clawing their way out of one of the shallow graves at the opposite side of the basement. Dante coughed hard as he pulled Corinne to her feet.
Water,
he gasped. Virgil tossed his flask of holy water to his friend. He drained half of it before handing the flask to Corinne.
Drink fast, we have to go.
Marcus stood, flames slowly returning to life as he stared at Corinne. Virgil wrenched the broadsword out of Lilith's chest and stood between him and the girl, while Dante held the patriarch blade high, his curved dagger with the crucifix fastened at the hilt.
Thanks. It was getting really hot down there.
Fire's not out yet.
Corinne?
Marcus whispered slowly, and for the first time in a long while he spoke with a voice the girl recognized. Her old neighbor she'd playfully flirted with when she walked her dog, and the man who had warned her of danger when he could have just easily have abandoned her to save himself. Corinne set the empty flask down.
Marcus?
The flames receded, and the man she once knew stood before her.
How can that be you? You died in the apartment fire.
I thought I did too.
Corinne, don't listen to a thing he says. Marcus is dead. This thing just hijacked his physical body and is leeching off what remains of his soul. I think when he died, you were the only thing he no longer hated about his life, so that your existence would be the only thing keeping this demon restrained. If you die, then the last of Marcus's humanity will be gone.
Dante turned to Virgil as the man took a step back in Corinne's direction.
If Marcus's soul is still in there, we can exorcise it and free it from the demon.
Far too late for that. The portal to the vestibule is still open. They're coming.
Marcus held out his hand to Corinne.
Corinne, I'm all right. Please, don't let them take me.
Who? Oh, Jesus Christ!
The girl shrieked as the mutilated form of Karen, Marcus's former wife, crawled from the same pit directly behind them. Her skin was a blackened shell and her eyes were runny blobs of bloody flesh. Tar-like blood and smoke belched from her mouth as she crawled forward towards Marcus.
Hell hath been summoned.
Lilith hissed in amusement as she slowly climbed back up to stand upon her scorpion legs. From all the shallow graves surrounding them, decomposing bodies began to spring forth, each blackened and charred, twisted into sharp fragments of their former selves. Dante and Virgil immediately began clearing a path with their blades, but most of them swarmed around Marcus, gripping him by the legs, beginning to devour him.
Corinne, help me.
Marcus screamed in panic. And suddenly, she was there, next to him.
Wait, if it's really you, I can't let them take you back down there. Whatever they made you, you were once a good man. You were my friend.
Thank you, Corinne.
He gave a triumphant smile. Flames erupted all around Marcus as his skin was vaporized, and he once again became the Burning Man, obliterating all the corpses gathering beneath him.
Your soul is mine.
Corinne screamed as the sleeves of her shirt caught fire and she fell backwards into Dante's arms. Lilith sprung at Marcus, while Virgil leapt at both of them with the broadsword, though to strike at which, Corinne had no idea. Dante held out the patriarch blade above her as Marcus fell upon them. Then, a gunshot rang out. A bullet crashed through Marcus's skeletal face and struck Corinne in the shoulder, splattering her blood upon him. Marcus wailed as the blood seemed to disorient him. Lilith's scorpion legs impaled Marcus as the fiery ground opened up and swallowed them both, though not before Virgil's sword sang and Lilith's head flew through the air to splatter with a wet thud upon the dirt. Then, there was nothing but silence all around them.
Ah, fuck!
Corinne gasped as Dante put a hand over her wound.
You're okay. We're all okay.
From above them on the ledge, Gemma Manetto stood, eyes wide, her gun pointed down at the spot where Marcus had been.
What in the rancid fuck did I just shoot at?
She asked in utter disbelief. Virgil picked up Lilith's severed head by the hair.
Something that couldn't be killed by a bullet, yet it saved us regardless.
Oh, okay, good. Excuse me.
Manetto turned and started vomiting into the corner. Corinne winced as Dante helped her up, her shoulder bleeding and her arms burned.
Where's my dog? That's where the bullet hit.
Manetto pointed to the hole in her car seat that Jasper Womack's slug had made after it punctured the windshield.
I felt the thing shoot right past my neck. I was out for a few seconds. Moron must have seen my birthmark and assumed it was blood all over my neck.
She ran her hand across the organic stain upon her throat. Dante leaned in and gave the woman a hug.
I'm glad you're all right. You starting to feel like you still belong here with us? Like you still have something left to contribute?
I'm leaning that way. I spoke to the kid's mother, Dante. The kid I couldn't save. She didn't hate me like I thought she did.
Dante bent forward and kissed the woman on the cheek and tapped the crucifix necklace with his finger.
I think you'll save the next one, Gemma, just like you saved us tonight.
I called the local cops about Jasper Womack. If they can't divert the resources to catch him themselves, they'll send some bounty hunters after him. They'll catch him before long.
She stared back at the ambulance where Corinne was being treated.
What did I see down in that pit with you, Dante? What were those things?
Dante put his hands in his pockets.
Do you really want to know?
Gemma Manetto paused.
No.
Virgil climbed up into the ambulance where Corinne was cradling Cosmo as best she could with her bandaged arms. Her left arm was also in a sling.
Broken collarbone. Arms are a little scorched. Fortunately, the sleeves took the worst of it. Thanks for saving my dog.
You're welcome.
Virgil? What happened to Marcus?
He was dragged back down to where he belonged. Or at least the demon occupying his body was. Can't say what happens to Marcus's soul. It may be trapped down there, but I have a theory.
What's that?
The reason your blood hurt him was because you had consumed holy water only a minute beforehand. That wouldn't have stopped him from harvesting your soul, especially if you surrendered it to him. But I think it was enough of a shock to break the demon's hold on him. If there was any good left in him that his soul harbored because of you, it may have escaped. You may not believe it, but your casual friendship with a troubled man may have been the difference between a second hell ravaging the earth. Sometimes just being a kind person is enough to tip the scales.
Corinne was silent for a moment,
I don't know what to think.
Think what you choose to. We all have to walk our own path.
You're not going to preach some higher calling to me?
Preaching is for holy prophets or unholy manipulators. I'm neither.
So, what are you then? An angel? Or were you?
Virgil shrugged again.
Angels have halos, Corinne. Right now, your future is more important than my past. I'm not a black-eyed kid, if that makes you feel better.
Virgil patted Cosmo on the head.
Your hospital bills will be taken care of. Once you are discharged, if you choose to, call Manetto. She'll find you and your dog a place to stay.
Well, she kind of owes it to me for shooting me.
Amen to that.
Virgil stepped down out of the ambulance. Corinne called after him.
Virgil, for now, I choose to believe in Dante and you. Thank you for saving me.
Dante wrapped Lilith's head in a shroud before locking it in the van's floor safe. He sat down in the passenger seat of the armored van.
How long can a demon as powerful as her maintain her form without a head?
I guess we'll find out.
Virgil turned the key in the ignition.
Chances are she'll try her luck in getting it back before she lets her master notice her without it.
Virgil tapped the broadsword's hilt as it lay sheathed between them.
Of course, there's always the chance she'll lose something else. Hard to guess which outcome she'd be more fearful of.
Dante yawned.
At least we don't have to deal with Marcus ever again. And hey, thanks for rescuing me from that place for a second time.
Let's not make a habit of it.
The armored van made a U-turn and exited the movie theater parking lot. In front of the lonely house in the woods, the dirt shifted in the garden where a dead man's ashes lay. Smoke rose from a spot a young girl had watched in horror as a dark, towering man had heaved a fiery breath. The smoke grew denser as a flame sprung to life from the cold earth. The ashes shifted, and a deep laugh rose from the man's final resting place.
So much yet to burn.
It's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Now imagine, you've boarded a plane to escape your past, only to find that everyone on board is already gone. Our protagonist, Rick, thought that a flight to Scotland would help him outrun his grief. When the passengers stare blankly and the flight attendant won't respond, it becomes clear. Something is very wrong at 30,000 feet. Now, this is a brilliant tale. I will say no more at the start because I don't want to give anything away, but I know you're going to love this one. So, without further ado, here we go with Lost Flight by Corpse Child. Part 1. But little was my notion that when we parted by the ocean, we were forever parted by the banks of the Lee. Silly wizard, banks of the Lee. Flight 249 now boarding. I repeat, Flight 249 now boarding. My head snapped up from my phone to look at the overhead screen. Sure enough, there was the numbers for my flight. Flight 249, one way to Scotland. This was it. Taking a deep breath, I picked up my bags and began walking to the terminal, walking toward the metaphorical gateway to my new life. I looked back one last time behind me, taking one last look at what I was soon to be leaving behind. For a moment, I was actually hesitant to go the rest of the way through the terminal. There's nothing for you here, Rick, I reminded myself before taking another deep breath. She's gone now. They both are. I took a moment to let one or two stray tears fall down my face before facing forward and walking through the terminal. I quietly found a seat and made myself comfortable. Strangely, I can remember just how quiet it was while the flight was boarding. People stepped onto the plane, disregarding each other for the most part. Everyone had this cold, lifeless look on their faces, like they too were trying to just get the hell out of town the same way I was. It was about another half hour before the announcement came over the loudspeaker. Now that I think of it, I don't remember at any point hearing any of the cabin attendants going over safety procedures or anything, though admittedly I wasn't paying much attention to much of anything once I'd sat down, having put my earbuds in and turned on my ASMR app. I was exhausted, having prepared for this trip for at least a week straight. I couldn't sleep at all through that week, nor do I think any of you would have been able to either, if every time you closed your eyes you had the same nightmare. If every time you laid down at night you saw the face of your loved one being engulfed in fire, screaming out to you to save them, before having her flesh seared from her bones. Would you be able to sleep peacefully? To this day I still wonder how the hell I didn't lose my mind long before all this went down. To be perfectly honest, I should have gone mad when it all happened, especially given just how little of what happened I understood. It was 2 years ago that Irene and I had decided to go to the mountains for our 3rd anniversary. We'd been a couple since college, and I even proposed to her at our graduation party. Since then, we'd been a happy little pair of lovebirds, until that day. Now, like I said, I can't really describe much of what happened in any comprehensible way. So much happened so quickly. I remember that me and her were hiking about 3/4 of the way up the mountain when we stopped, having to rest our legs. Panting, I remarked to her, "Geez, you think after all that time doing track, we'd have made it a little further, huh?" "Says you," she replied, scoffing. She made her voice try to go deep to sound like me saying, "Oh, hon, can we please stop? I gotta rest my legs." "Well, I said that because you were dragging ass behind me, slowpoke." She smirked, flipped me off, and delivered a punch to the shoulder for my smart-ass mouth. I laughed and said, "Call that a punch? Come on, Mama. I know you can hit harder than that." She snickered before stiffening her upper lip into a defiant smirk and trying to hit me again. This time I caught her wrists and trapped them in a crisscross, holding her still. She struggled against me for a second before conceding. Sighing, she said, "Okay, babe, you win. You're the strongest and the handsomest." She said this last part with a wink and a sly grin parting the corner of her mouth. I almost didn't notice, though, having lost myself in her eyes. Those ember-red jewels that sat peacefully in the middle of 2 oceans of midnight seas, burning right through my eyes, through my mind, straight through to my heart and soul every time I stared into them. For a moment, the only sound around the two of us, the only signs of life from around us, was the singular sound of the breeze whipping our hair and the clothes on our backs. "What?" she asked. I shook my head, blinking. "Huh?" I asked. "Can I go now, officer?" she joked, her grin growing amused again. I looked down to see I still had her wrists. I chuckled nervously, releasing them. "Sorry about that, just, kind of lost myself there for a sec." "What do you mean?" Her sly grin returned. "You trying to say you like playing rough?" She then giggled and winked, and I chuckled. "No, God, if I told you, you have the prettiest eyes in the world." Well, she snickered and replied, "Well, 1,000,000 times, actually. 3,000 just today." I smiled. "I'll happily tell you 1,000,000 times more." After that, silence pervaded the trail around us. The only sounds of life around us were the early autumn breeze whipping our hair and the clothes on our backs. Gradually, almost unconsciously, our bodies became closer and closer to one another until eventually our eyes closed and our lips met. We stayed locked in each other's embrace for a whole 25 seconds, the heat of the moment actually drowning out the chill of the wind prickling at our bodies. I'd like to say that we'd never separated had it not been for the fact that I could feel the heat intensify from her body. It was a whole 5 seconds before I opened my eyes, doing so only after I felt Irene's hands jerk away from my body like she was in a hurry to get away from me. When I did open my eyes, I saw Irene looking horrified at her hands. "Irene?" I asked, feeling my heart rate jump from 0 to 10,000 in that half a second time span. "Baby, what's wrong?" She looked at me, opening her mouth to speak, only to get cut off by a sharp cry of pain that had her doubling over, clutching her stomach. "Irene!" I reached out to her, but instantly retracted when I saw her body beginning to glow. She cried out in pain, her whole body glowing brighter and brighter. I began to feel heat, intense heat, like her body in itself was an exploding star emitting from her body. I even saw beginning to singe the hair from my arms. The brighter her body glowed, the harder it became for me to be able to see her. I shouted, "Irene!" For a brief moment, I saw her eyes stare back at me, wide and afraid. "Richard!" she cried. When I reached for her again, a searing pain ran across my arm, and when I pulled it back, I saw the skin beginning to blister. Before I could try to do anything again, her body released a sort of shockwave of blinding light that, coupled with the scorching blaze of heat, made me almost swear for a moment that I was on fire. I was forced to shield my eyes, and when I opened them again, I was alone. I looked all around. Nothing. "Irene!" My head swung furiously all around. "Irene! Irene!" There was no answer from anywhere. My head stopped swinging when I looked down at where she was standing. Right there in front of me, in place of my beautiful wife, was a large black spot where I could see small wafts of smoke jumping from it to pollute the sky. At that moment, I dropped to my knees and began screaming Irene's name deliriously. I'd have sworn I was there for next to an eternity, having continued my howling until my throat tore itself in half. Not even much of an exaggeration either, judging from the doctor's visit I had to take later on because of it. But at some point, a couple walking by found me and asked me what was wrong. I'll say two things. First, bless them for actually giving enough of a damn to stop and want to even try listening to some howling stranger who, no doubt, scared the hell out of them with his racket. Second, if they were able to understand a damn bit of the inane gibberish I was spewing at them, then they deserve an award of some sort. I tried my best to tell them, in one way or another, that my wife was missing. They helped me down and off the mountain, by which I really mean they more or less dragged me away from the black, smouldering remains of my wife, kicking and screaming like a lunatic. Like I said, bless them, and escorted me to the nearest police station. From there, it was more or less the same situation, with me trying to explain something to them that I didn't understand while having no composure whatsoever. Long story short, they told me to go home and that they'd search for her. Told me they'd find her. I started awake on the plane. For a moment, my head swiveled around the cabin. Irene? Everything was still quiet. Everyone was still, facing forward, either with their heads down, likely on their phones or something, or just staring blankly at the cockpit. I relaxed once more in my seat. She's gone, Rick. I looked out of the window to my right. The sky was a perfect shade of blue, the kind of shade you don't normally see unless you're right there in it, swimming or at least floating in it. Unless it's all around you, in a way that's achievable only when you're 50,000 feet in the air on a plane, or on a mountainside. I shook my head, turning away from the window. It's been 2 goddamn years. She's gone, she ain't coming back. Readjusting myself in my chair, I refixed my earbuds and restarted the app. In seconds, I was once again in sleep's numbing embrace. Images of the perfect blue sky, of Irene, so quite literally drowned out by those of grey, cloudy skies, unleashing a torrential downpour upon stone-cold earth. It was a perfect diversion. Anodyne, if you will, allowing me to completely forget about Irene, forget about my old life, forget that I was alone. I have your heart so long as it beats, Ricky boy, she said, giggling. She sat on my lap as I laid across my old, torn-up couch, straddling me, wearing her sports bra and leggings. She'd just gotten home from yoga practice. She'd hopped on me as soon as she'd walked through the door. She was smiling down at me, causing me to lose myself in her eyes. She ran her fingers along my chest, slowly running them along so I'd feel every soft inch of them as she went. "Well, I'm glad to see you home too, babe," I replied, chuckling. She giggled her adorable little girlish giggle, a giggle whose sound is matched by the giggle of a baby, before leaning down to touch her nose to mine. "Yeah, what's the occasion?" I asked, grinning. "What do you mean?" she replied with her own smile widening. "Oh, you're awfully cheery this afternoon. Usually you're tired after yoga practice. What, did you have a little extra something in your shake today?" She laughed, throwing her head back. "Maybe a little bit," she replied with a joking sense of guilt, giving me the look a child gives when they've been caught eating glue paste. "Little bit, huh?" "Uh-huh." "Oh, God, you're adorable, you know that." "Like you'll ever let me forget," she joked. "And you're such a little goof, you know that?" I winked. "Like you'd ever let me forget." A grin stretched from one ear to the other as she gave me a peck on the nose before laying her head down on my chest, nuzzling her head directly in the center of my pecs. Looking down at her, with the rays of the afternoon sun just ever so gently stroking her face, the same way her fingers so tenderly caressed my chest, giving her an almost blazing aura that I could actually detect the heat from, I told myself, "Yeah, Ricky boy, you really are the luckiest man alive." Despite the rinky-dink apartment, long, exhausting, though decently paying job, and whatever bullshit you carry around with you in your day-to-day life, you have this angel on your chest. She happily holds your heart. The heat radiating from her began getting to me more and more. I noticed beads of sweat forming on my forehead. I began looking around the room, looking for the thermostat. Her head raised up again to look me in the eyes. "Baby, what's wrong?" Nothing, just, I paused for a moment, a feeling of nausea briefly taking effect on me. "Is it, getting hot in here?" She chuckled. "No, it's just you." She winked, saying this. I chuckled, though not as relaxed as before, and replied, "Yeah, but seriously, don't you feel that?" "Feel what?" "I don't know, it's burning up in here. Can you see the thermostat?" She looked over to the far corner of the living room. "It's only room temperature, hon," she said, a smile slowly giving way to a look of concern. "Are you, feeling okay?" "Yeah, I think so." She put the back of her hand on my forehead. Almost immediately I winced, feeling like a scorching piece of metal had been pressed against it. "Oh shit, Ricky, you're burning up." "Look who's talking," I joked. Her face, however, told me she wasn't taking it that way. Her eyebrows raised. "Huh? You're even hotter than I am now." "Babe, I'm serious. I think you have a fever." "I'm serious too. Your hand was just shy of singeing my hair just now." She got up and walked into the kitchen before returning with a glass of water and a couple of Tylenol. For just a moment, I swore I saw the water in the glass begin bubbling, the way it would if it were boiling. I didn't say anything, though. "Here, take a couple of these. I'll make some food later, okay?" I did as requested, despite knowing damn well I didn't have a fever. After that, she went to take a shower. I lay alone on the couch, alone once again. My mind was divided between thoughts of joining her in the shower and wondering what had happened there. What was going on with Irene's skin just now, I wondered. I know she was directly under the sun and all, but it shouldn't have heated up like that, should it? I ended up electing the former option, to join her, and got up from the couch, undressing as I went toward the bathroom. I, almost skillfully in a way, managed to slip into the bathroom completely unnoticed, quieter than a mouse. Immediately upon entering, though, I noticed just how humid the air had become. From the instant I walked in, it was like I'd walked into a steam room, moisture and steam from the air almost suffocating me. I actually had to turn around and walk straight back out. But how the hell can she stand it in there? I looked back into the bathroom. The water was still running. Steam was billowing out in clouds from the open doorway. Despite this, I could still hear Irene's soft, tender voice singing, "May it be," not at all impeded by the heat. At one point, starting to put my clothes back on, I looked in the bathroom and my eyes widened when I saw a bright orange glow coming from it. I was about to investigate further, but before I could reach the bathroom again, the glow disappeared and the water was turned off. Not knowing what the hell I was supposed to do, if anything really, I went back to lying on the couch. Irene stepped out of the bathroom, towel drying her hair while the towel around her body slowly found itself falling away from her, accidentally revealing herself. Normally I get caught red-handed staring or trying to pretend not to notice, both of which elicited sly, playful giggles from her before one thing would lead to another. This time, when she caught me staring, it was with a puzzled look on my face. "What is it, hon?" she asked. Nothing. Just, thought I saw something." "What?" "I don't know. Something glowing." She frowned at this. "Glowing?" "Yeah, from the bathroom while you were in the shower." She turned to look back at the bathroom before looking at me while pointing to it. She did another double take before shrugging the whole thing off and telling me she was tired out after yoga and she'd be going to lie down. She went into the bedroom while I remained on the couch, alone and confused. I woke, this time needing the restroom. It was night out, though everyone still appeared awake. Hundreds of blank eyes, dead faces and hollow stares were all focused forward. And I'll admit, by this point, this was beginning to unnerve me. Why was everybody seemingly acting weird all at the same time? Regardless, I slowly walked to the back of the cabin toward the restroom, at least where I thought the restroom was. When I made it to the other end of the plane, as far as I could go anyways, I couldn't find the restrooms anywhere. I looked and started back in the other direction. Along the way, I kept looking along the walls to see if maybe I'd missed the sign along the way. Needless to say, though, I hadn't. Then I started looking for an attendant, or someone who might be able to help me. Through all of this, silence itself had a chokehold on the entire plane. I felt like I wasn't even on a plane, like I wasn't even awake. I made it to the front end of the plane and knocked on the door to the cockpit. I stood there for a good 15 minutes with nothing at all happening. I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to knock again or just go back to my seat. In the end, the answer, to my surprise, would be neither, as, shockingly, the door opened and out stepped a young, rail-thin lady in an attendant's uniform. "Excuse me, ma'am," I asked. She didn't respond, or move, or even seem to breathe, for that matter. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I can't seem to find the restroom. You think you'd be able to help me out?" She continued staring at me with almost corpse-like eyes, glazed-looking and greyish-white in colour. Her mouth also seemed to hang sort of limply. Her face perfectly portrayed the emptiness of both her mind and her heart. In this sense, she didn't look dead. She was less than dead. I waved my hand in front of her face, garnering no response from that either. May I speak to the captain then?" For the record, I knew that this wouldn't ever be allowed under normal circumstances, but A, these weren't exactly normal circumstances, were they? And B, I was on the verge of slapping her just to get some kind of reaction or answer out of her. And so I figured asking something a bit ludicrous wasn't altogether pointless. More to my shock, it actually worked as she slowly spoke, saying in the most scratchy, monotone voice, devoid entirely of any recognizable emotion, save maybe depression, even that's a bit of a stretch. "Please return to your seat, sir. We'll be reaching our final destination soon." The way her mouth moved, coupled with the deadpan tone in her voice, I almost swore it was some sort of puppet talking to me. Okay, but I need the restroom. Can you just tell me where..." "Time is almost here, sir. It will all be over soon." My eyes widened. Excuse me, I said, feeling my heart already starting to kick into overdrive. It will all be over soon, sir, she repeated, slowly turning back toward the door. Yeah, wait. Please return to your seat, sir. It was the last thing I heard from her before she shut the door back in my face. For a moment I stood, dumbfounded. The hell was that? What was her problem? I turned to look back at the other passengers. Each one of them stared unblinkingly toward me. Not at me, but rather through me. The same way the attendant was just a second ago. What the hell is going on? I would have been more inclined to press the attendant again for answers, namely what the hell she meant by "it'll all be over soon," but unfortunately, my need for the bathroom all but diminished any concentration I had with that. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands and start hunting for the restroom myself again. I went through the cabin for about another 10 minutes, each one that passed making it harder and harder to hold it in, until I finally found what looked like a restroom about midway through. How I'd missed it, especially given that it was located just a few rows from where I was sitting, I didn't know, but nor did I care. I rushed as quickly as I could to the door and swung it open before hurling myself head first inside. While I was in there, I started thinking again about what the flight attendant had said. Now normally, I'd have chalked it up just to her having an off day or something. But then, why was everybody having an off day? Why was she the only one that had spoken at all? We'll be reaching our final destination soon, sir. Why does that sound so familiar? I thought then of her voice, her face, how lifeless it looked, as well as the faces of the other passengers. All of it was familiar to me in a way that gave me an almost physically sickening feeling. But why? You okay, honey bunny? I asked her. She was on the couch, looking glumly out of the window. Her eyes broke from the window to look at me. The expression on her face was dead, careless, unfiltered, untouched by any sort of emotion. Irene, what's wrong? She sighed, a sort of sigh that I almost couldn't hear. It was less a sigh, actually, and more like she was just giving away her last breath. My heart melted right then and there, not even knowing what the hell was wrong. The sun shone, clear skies, and we were even off from work that day. I was even planning on surprising her with a trip to the movies, her number one go-to when it came to ideas for date nights. I went over and reached out to put my hand on her shoulder when she retracted away from my hand. I froze, unsure of what I should or even could do. In all of that time, a little over 2.5 years into our marriage, she'd never once gotten into moods like this. She always had the most beaming, vibrant, free-spirited personality I'd ever seen in a woman. She'd always been the sunshine to my cloudiest days, while I was always the one that kept her down to earth, so to speak, keeping her feet on the ground, you know. But this... Irene, baby, talk to me. What happened? She looked at me, looking more through my eyes than at them. Her mouth slowly opened, and she spoke in a voice I almost couldn't believe was coming from her. It sounded like I was hearing an answering machine talk to me, with somehow even less inflection than one, if that was possible at all. It's all going to end soon. What? I frowned. She kept staring, her face not wavering in the slightest. Baby, what are you talking about? What's ending? She looked to the window again. I followed her gaze. Everything was normal outside, vibrant, alive, cheerful. It's all ending. I can feel it. I slowly put my hand on her shoulder. I instantly jerked back when I felt her skin was all of a sudden blisteringly hot again. I'd done this a few times before. I could never understand why. Baby, you're burning up, I said to her. Her eyes didn't move from the window this time. It's coming to an end. Everything. I don't understand. What are you... Look at it all, Rick. I stopped, turning back toward the window. It's beautiful, isn't it? I stayed silent for a moment before answering. Yeah, it is. She let out another very faint sigh. Something's happening, Rick. To me, She trailed off for a moment before finishing with, I can feel it. What's coming? I asked. I don't know. I don't know what it is or why it's happening, but I know it is, and it's happening soon. About 10 to 20 minutes passed in silence after that. There was no real comeback for that, no optimistic or comforting thought I could give. Call me what you will, terrible consolation, poor bedside manner, or what have you. I didn't have any words of comfort to offer my wife in that moment. Like I said, she'd never behaved or talked like this before, so I had absolutely no way to respond to this. And also, like I mentioned, I was never the most uplifting type myself. Doing my best to at least try to comfort her, I spoke up in my cheeriest voice possible, though one that likely wouldn't have cheered up a crying child, let alone someone as depressed as she was. Hey, I think we should go to the movies today. We don't have work, and I believe they're playing it. I stopped when she turned to look at me, her face still dead as a doornail. Did you not hear a word I just said? She asked, her voice remaining in its deadlocked monotone. I clammed up. I just can't, Rick. Not when I know it's all going to be over soon anyway. She took one last look at the window before getting up from the couch and walking into the bedroom. Wait, Irene, what are you... She shut the door right as I was finishing the sentence. I stayed in the living room, sitting alone, speechless, both my heart jackhammering in my chest as well as my head spinning all the way round like it was a globe for a solid 15 minutes. I couldn't decide whether I was supposed to go to her, to try again to comfort her somehow, or if I just should stay here, sitting on my knees staring at the hallway, jaw slacked like an idiot. I wanted to hold her, don't get me wrong. I wanted to squeeze her the way you'd squeeze a plush toy when you were sad. I wanted to clutch her tightly to me, like if I were to let go, I and the whole of reality would fall apart. But then, would that have made any difference? Regardless, a few moments later, I decided to get up from the floor and walk into the bedroom. On the bed lay my wife, lying straight and stiff on her side, facing away from the doorway. I froze at the sight for two reasons. For starters, she never slept like this. She was always one to curl up into a ball, making it perfect and nuzzle against me, giving me that almost fatherly-like feeling that I was nestling a sleeping child next to me. But now this, as well as the fact that her body was glowing. I rubbed my eyes to make sure I was seeing it correctly. Sure enough, amid the darkness, with the only other light perhaps coming from the window, bleeding past the curtains, there she was, a golden aura beaming around her. She was stiff, rigid still, making me wonder if she was awake, asleep, or if she was dead. My foot raised to take a step, but I wasn't sure what to do. Of course, the logical answer would have been to get to her, maybe snuggle her close to me and say, well, that was just it. What the hell was I supposed to say? My wife was glowing, and like the other times before, I could feel the heat blazing from her body. She was a sun in the middle of a dark abyss, a flame flickering in a dark hallway, one that appeared to be flickering out. The sight of this was killing me with every second I spent looking at it because I knew she was in pain, but from what I couldn't begin to know. I finally took a step forward, then another and another. My feet, more or less, moved absently from my body. My mind and my body acted separate from each other, with every instinct telling me I needed to stay at the doorway and, albeit feebly, try figuring out what the hell was going on before trying to get to her, while my body all but flipped its deuces at that and continued forward. I silently reached the bed, where I slowly climbed in behind her, went to put my arm around her. I froze, a stinging pain starting to shoot throughout my arm. My arm hovered there for a moment before curling back to my body, and so, unable to touch her or say anything to her, I just lay there, staring at her stiffened back. The room was warm and quiet, the way you'd imagine a fireplace to sound, save the crackle of the flames. I don't know when or how long it had been when I had the idea, but I suddenly found it in me to speak up. Hey, want to do something cool for our anniversary? She made no movements, voicing no response, and I continued anyway. You know, we never did get to make it to the top of the mountains like we always planned. She still didn't move, but I did see the glow around her starting to dim. Out of a sort of instinct, I reached out again to touch her back. It was still warm, but tolerable, and becoming cooler and cooler by the second. I couldn't tell you why, other than a guess that whatever the hell it was that was going on with her was somehow linked to her emotions or something. In other words, my words were getting through to her in some way and comforting her. I started softly caressing her back along the length of her spine. Her skin continued to cool under my fingers. I can still see us. I started again, forming the image in my head of the two of us on the mountainside that day 3 years ago, the day I first proposed to her. You remember, baby? The clear sunny sky, big fluffy clouds. I chuckled. You always called them sky pillows. Yeah, remember how we were lying down and looking at the sky pillows, trying to see who'd be the first to spot one that looked like a fish? Her body had all but stopped glowing by now, and her body was just mildly lukewarm. The skin felt soft and mellow again. I think you were the first one to actually find one. Said it looked like Nemo for some reason. I could never see it. Marlin, I heard her say faintly. Huh? It was Marlin, not Nemo. I chuckled. Yeah, right, Marlin. My bad. He was bigger than most of the other ones, but still only noticeable if you were looking, just like an actual fish in the ocean. Just like you. That's when I finally felt her body start to move beneath my fingers. She shifted around to face me. The face was hard to see, with only half of it illuminated by the ever-dimming rays from the window. That said, I could see that her haunting glare of sorrow, her empty stare, was gone, replaced with a more familiarly tender and loving face, the one a mother gives her child when they're what makes them smile that day. You always stood out to me, my last little fish alone in the sea, looking for something, but wasn't sure what. A hand moved up to my chest, stroking it like how I stroked her back. You always had the better eyes of both of us, I said. We stayed out there till the sun started going down. And all the little sky pillows went away. She finished, slipping a small yet oh so adorable little giggle in. I snickered. Remember how we fell asleep right there on the mountainside, and the ranger had to wake us up and run us out of there? I giggled. You thought he was Smokey the Bear. The laugh was noticeable this time. You started freaking out, and I had to hold on to you to keep you from going apeshit on that guy. I took a deep breath then, before asking her, remember what I said to you? She rolled over again, putting her face first on top of me, looking directly into my eyes, and she answered, Irene, baby doll, I'll always love you till the end of time. You reached into your pocket and pulled out this ring, the most beautiful ring I'd ever seen. She held up her finger. I grabbed you up and tried to snap you in half with a bear hug. Damn near did, too, I said, chuckling. She grinned a toothy grin, allowing the last rays of light from the window to accentuate each and every one of her beautiful ivory teeth. She moved in closer, bringing her nose close to mine, and the two of us kissed. Knowing now that her skin was normal again, I slowly brought my hands up to take a hold of her gently. The two of us stayed in an eternal embrace for the rest of that afternoon, with her falling asleep curled up next to me, her face nuzzled in my chest. I stayed awake, though. I was unable to sleep. I couldn't risk the thought of something happening to her while I was asleep. It's all gonna end anyways. The words echoed through my head, hollowing it out in my brain, making it the single dominant thought. It was a lone voice that looped in my head, piercing the otherwise peacefully quiet atmosphere of the bedroom. What could any of it mean, though? I looked down at my wife's beautiful face, sound asleep, and wondered just what could have been going through that beaming, amazing mind of hers. What could she have been dreaming about? Was that what started this? Maybe she just had a bad dream and took it too seriously. But what was going on with her body? I ran my hand along her back again. Other than being maybe a bit warmer than normal, her skin was otherwise completely normal. She remained still, not fidgeting or talking in her sleep the way she usually would if she was having a nightmare. She was sound. She was safe. I hugged her as close to me as I could and held her like that until the sun rose the next morning. All coming to an end. Lost Flight, Part 2. Finishing up as quickly as I could in the restroom, I stepped out and scampered back to my seat. I put my earbuds in, hoping the sounds of 90s grunge music might drown out the flight attendant's voice in my head. It didn't. I looked out through the window, spotting... well, that was just it. I spotted nothing. I leaned forward to look a bit closer, and there was nothing. Everything was one giant grey cloud around the plane. Ah, great, I thought. A thunderstorm, and we're right in the middle of it. Fan-fucking-tastic. I closed my eyes and sighed. Ah, calm yourself. You're just... running? My eyes snapped open. The voice was soft, monotone, mechanical almost, coming from the seat behind me. I turned to look behind me and saw this little girl. Couldn't have been a day over 9 or 10, sitting alone who, like everyone else on this creepy-ass flight, was staring forward with the blankest, deadest stare I've ever seen from a person. Lifeless, emotionless, mechanical. Excuse me? I asked. She continued staring at me with two doll-like eyes. You're running from something, aren't you? I frowned at her. What are you talking about? I started looking around. And where are your... They're gone too, Rick. My mouth fell open. My heart froze. How do you know my name? We all know who you are, Rick. You're running away just like I did. I don't understand. Of course you don't. I raised my eyebrow. For a moment, I couldn't tell whether or not it was a good idea to keep trying to talk to her. I'm not saying that I was scared of her hurting me or anything, obviously. But something about what she was saying, or at the very least implying, sounded to me like something I wouldn't want to know. Part of this is the fact that, at least from what I could see, she wasn't trying to be scary or anything like that. Nothing about what she said sounded like she was trying to exaggerate or even make some sort of shock statement. No, she meant it, every bit of it. And to answer your question, they're not here. I won't be seeing them for a long time. Your parents? I asked stupidly. She nodded. What? I told you already. I tried to run away, just like you are now. What makes you think I'm running from something? I can see it all over your face. You're running away from something. That's why you took this flight, isn't it? To get away? You lost something, didn't you? Closed my mouth. Figuring by now that through some means I couldn't understand this little girl knew just about everything about me, I decided that I'd just let her do the majority of the talking for herself. Was it someone you loved? It was for me. I sank back into my seat, hoping to send the message that I wasn't interested in talking anymore. It didn't convey, and so I could still hear the girl continue. "Was it someone in your family?" she asked in a monotone, droning sort of voice. A voice that you'd expect to hear from a vintage audio cassette, cracked and sort of fuzzy, unclear. "For me, it was my little sister." I'd just fitted one of my earbuds back in and was in the act of fitting the other one when I heard her add, "She burned up and was gone." This made me freeze up. Every joint, every muscle, all seized up at the same time, while my heart jackhammered away at my chest. Burned up. Gone. Well, what do you... She used to be so happy until that day. We used to always run around the neighborhood, playing together after school. It was always fun with her. My mind immediately took me through every memory I'd stored of me and Irene. Every cherished moment, good, bad, and everything weird in between. From when I'd met her in high school to the day I lost her. Every feature of her face, every tender word she spoke to me, all started unloading on my brain. It was heavy, overwhelming almost. "One day I remember," she continued, "we'd just gotten off the bus and were walking the rest of the way home, and I saw that she looked depressed. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me, everything's gonna end. All coming to an end. We went home that day and she wouldn't even play with me. When supper time came, she never came down. When we looked in her room, she was gone. The only thing she left behind was a large black spot in the middle of her floor." My eyes doubled in size. Black spot, just like... I rose up and looked behind my seat again. She was still staring dead at me. You saw this happen too?" She blankly nodded. My heartbeat abruptly ceased. Damn, then I wasn't crazy. "We all have, Rick," she said. She pointed to another passenger on the opposite side of us, a couple of rows down. "See him?" I nodded. "He lost his brother like that." "How do you know this?" "You picking this flight wasn't an accident. It wasn't natural what happened either." Her head turned to look out of her window, admittedly the first time I'd seen anybody but me on this flight look anywhere other than forward. My mouth hung agape for a moment. God, how does she know all of this? How does she know me or what happened to Irene? I passed a glance around at the other passengers. How could it have happened to them? "Because it's not new either," chimed the little girl, not looking away from the glass. "What? Hey, how are you?" "Not new." I went silent again while she sighed and said, "This has been going on for over 100 years or more." "Wait, what the hell do you mean?" "Look out the window." I turned to face it. Outside of the window, the sky appeared colorless. It was as though the plane had flown into a nimbus so thick that it may as well have been a large pillow smothering the plane on all sides. "What? I don't understand." "Of course you don't. No one usually does. Blind men often don't know why they're blind until the truth forces their eyes to open just to see the truth." There was a dramatic, somewhat sinister pause that she made hang in the air for a solid half a minute before finishing with, "That's nothing at all." "What? Look, I'm sorry, can you just explain what this is? I mean, where the hell even are we? Why is everyone so... Lost?" she asked, looking down from the window. I froze and then began laughing. Nothing was funny, but at the same time, it was funny, if you take my meaning. One of those, well, when you put it that way, type deals. Yeah. Maybe that is a good way to put it, ain't it? It's the truth. She was finally looking at me again. Her deadpan face seemed to fall even further into an expression of sadness. If you could have seen the face of this little girl in that instant, you would have seen the one true definition of the word hopeless. It was the same look Irene gave me that afternoon. We're all lost. We're all running. From what? What are you talking about here? Why did you board this flight, Ricky? To get away for a while. Get away from what? First, I said nothing. I couldn't see what this little brat was going on about. I wanted her to either giggle and tell me all this was a joke or start making some sort of sense, but I got neither. Instead, she just stared at me expectantly. Well, to get away from my hometown for a while, like I just said. Why though, Ricky? What was so wrong with your little town? I groaned. Look, kid, I'm serious when I say this. Just leave me alone if you're not going to just tell me what's going on. She kept gazing directly in my eyes, using them somehow to convey a strange yet oddly familiar feeling. Numbness. Emptiness. What's happening? Why am I feeling like this? Where is this place? How did we get here? Not by accident, Ricky. She got up from her seat then and walked toward the back of the cabin. I got up from my seat and started after her. Hey, wait. She ignored me. Her lead was a good few feet ahead of me, yet moving so fast that I thought for sure she'd just disappear all the way to the back before I could even blink. Suddenly, though, she stopped and turned to one of the passengers to her right. See him? She asked, raising her arm to point at the man in the seat. You see anything wrong? I looked at the man. He stared forward like everyone else, though with an admittedly even less emotional expression than the rest. What about him? I asked. Looks fine to me. Really? Fine? She cocked her head to the side. This looks like someone who's fine to you? Okay, so he looks down in the dumps, but what's that got to do with it? He looks dead, doesn't he? I exchanged glances back and forth between the two. He stared forward, completely oblivious to either of us. I guess. Well, he isn't. But he's not far from it. What? Look here, she said, pointing to the man's chest, where I saw a hole growing in the center. My eyes grew. The hell? I asked, shocked. What is that? It's what happens to us all. She turned to face me again, unbuttoning her shirt a bit to reveal a hole in her own chest. You have it too. It's a feeling of emptiness, the pain of loss. What do you mean I have it? I don't have it. I stopped, realizing as I passed my hands over my chest that there was something off. Lifting up my shirt, I found to my horror that she was right. Holy shit, a fucking hole in my chest. What is... This is what it feels like to feel nothing, the girl chimed in. Wait, what does that mean? How do you know? How do you keep knowing what I'm... I should know, Ricky boy. It's my fault you're on this flight to begin with. My breath caught in my throat. Wait, what? Who are you? She stared at me, expressing both numbness as well as acceptance. As well as expectance. A look that told me she was disappointed I didn't know this sooner. In all honesty, I was telling myself the same thing. Oh, Irene, but... She held up her hand, silencing me. You remember what I told you, Ricky? About how it would all end? Yeah, I do. Well, here we are. At the end. She waved her hands around the cabin. I don't understand. You're saying the world's gonna end? Yes, for you, leastways. Wait, what? What's that supposed to mean? You don't see the beauty of the world anymore, do you? I looked again out of the window. Dull grey lifeless sky surrounded the plain on all sides. There's no color to you, is there? No, but... And no, those aren't clouds, hon. You're seeing the world, but not the world you want to see. You're seeing the world the way that only those who are lost do. Lost? Empty, dead inside, numb. Take your pick, they all mean the same thing. All of them are the products of a lost soul. It happens when we lose something we cherished above all else in the world. How do you know this? How come you never... Because you weren't lost. You wanted purpose in your life. You wanted a reason to keep going. So I was given to you. I was able to give you a purpose while filling the hole in my own soul, for a time anyway. But how? I mean, when did you... Her voice got deeper, sounding more like her adult self as she said, "It was winter. I was about 13 and Penelope was 11. Through everything, good times and bad, whether we were hanging out or fighting with each other, the two of us were each other's best friends. It was snowing out and we decided to go sledding." Her stare returned to the window. Mine was redirected to the man. I began to see the hole spread out more and more, engulfing and dissolving more and more of him away. The more it did, the more I noticed that his body began to glow a distinct sort of golden, orangish color. "I went first," she continued. "Then it was Penelope's turn. But something went wrong. She ended up going much further than I did, far past the tree line and into the woods. She never came back out, and even after 6 months or more of searching, she was never found. The hole had swallowed most of the man's chest and was now working its way up and around his neck. I started feeling the familiar warmth coming from him, the same as what I'd felt from Irene before. That's when my soul became lost. Why are you telling me this? Why am I seeing all of this? What's happening to me? She turned back to me with that same stare she'd given me that day on the couch and recited, "Have you not heard a word I said?" "I have, but it makes no sense. I mean, what happened to you? Why are you here? Why are you a child? Why?" "Try to run away just like you are, just like they are." She pointed to the man again, who was now glowing much brighter than a minute ago. What's gonna... He's gonna cease to exist. The world has ended for them, so now he's gonna go with it. "Cease to exist?" I exclaimed. "How do we stop it?" "You don't. The only ones that can stop that are themselves. They've lost their worlds, we've lost our worlds, and now it's time for us to go away too." "But wait, what about you? How are you still here?" This was when, for the first time, I watched something akin to genuine sadness mold into her small face as she said in her adult voice, "Because of you, Ricky boy." She came up and tenderly put her hand on my chest. Immediately, the hole in the center of my chest began to slowly open itself wider. "I told you, as long as you live, I'll always be with you, holding your soul." A feeling of numbness spread throughout my body from my chest. "You've been trying to run from me, just like I was running from my sister. You want to get away because you can't let go." My body felt hollow all of a sudden. All I could think to do was stand there, still as stone, staring slack-jawed at Irene. I couldn't feel anything, inside or out. The hole expanded, swallowing most of my stomach and already beginning to creep down my legs. "Because you won't let go. You've become lost like the rest of us." "What's going to happen to me?" I asked. There was considerably less emotion in my voice than there should have been. The emptiness was spreading, I realized, hollowing me out of mind, body, and spirit. "The same thing that happened to me," she replied, her voice noticeably cracking. "The world, life itself, will end for you. You won't exist anymore, and you'll fade from everyone's memory, along with the rest of us." I would have lost it hearing this under normal circumstances. I'd have flown into a panic trying to undo this, but the thing was, I didn't necessarily want to. I wasn't afraid, mostly, of course, due to the inability to feel at all, but also because a small part of me, the part of me that was consuming me, came to the conclusion that at least the nightmares would end, right? I'd be able to free myself of her, yeah? Hell, from a more optimistic perspective, this part of me presented the hope that, whatever happens, maybe I could be reunited with Irene again. We'd be together beyond even time, right? As long as you live. Her words echoed, bringing my naive fantasy crashing back to a grim reality. If I were no longer here, if I no longer existed, then neither would she. I was the only reason she was still here now, why she'd been around past the age of 13, why she wasn't completely lost. I'd kept her whole, despite me being the downer type of us both. I was the reason she wanted to shine. I began to feel tears sting my eyes. Irene. I know you don't want to, Ricky, and I can't blame you if you don't, but please, stop running and let go. I can't. How do I? It's not too late. You just have to let go of me. You mean forget about you? No, not forget. Detach. Accept the truth. Of what? That I'm gone. I know it'll hurt you, but this will destroy us both if you don't. More and more, the feeling returned to my body, bringing with it a sense of something heavy, something crushing, something suffocating almost. I love you, Rick. I never stopped, and I wish I could have stayed. I wish I could have been stronger. But you've always been the strongest of us, and I need you to be strong again now that I'm gone. The hole in my chest closed up again as I said, my breath shaking and broken in tears. I love you too, Irene. Her other hand was then placed on my chest, and I watched the little girl in front of me transform into the familiar form of my beloved wife. Her body shone with an ivory aura that illuminated the dreary cabin surrounding us and overshadowed everything and everyone around us. Her face welcomed me with her warmest, most tender smile. In the short space of time this occurred, there were no sounds from me, her, or anything else around. It was me and her amid a beautiful white space. Serenity. Her hands moved tenderly from my chest and up and around my neck. My hands reflexively moved around her waist, gently pulling her closer to me. Then at last, we kissed. It was like every ounce of every emotion I kept bottled up channeled through my lips and into hers. She was taking all of my sorrow, all of my grief, my misery, and taking it into her. It was my relief, a way of holding me for comfort the same way I had her that day. I didn't feel her pull away. The only thing I did feel was an intense pain throughout my body as I woke to find myself sprawled out on the summit of a mountain. My head was throbbing madly, and my vision was little more than a giant cloud. That said, I realized something then. I could distinguish the color of the grass on the mountain around me. Not only that, but I looked up and was instantly blinded by the light of the sun. The colors, the heat, the life around me, it was all normal again. When my eyes adjusted a bit more, I found the hunks of the plane around me scattered everywhere. I attempted to sit up, which took a bit of effort, but I managed to do it before looking around to see if any of the other passengers had survived whatever the hell apparently happened while I was blacked out. And that's when I found, to my shock, that there was no trace of anyone else at all. I didn't want to know what to expect really, but I would have figured there would have been at least one or two of their bodies, or maybe parts of it. Something to signify that they were on the plane. But there was nothing, only me. Struggling to my feet, I managed to wade through, staggering until I found the discarded cockpit. I picked up the dangling radio, again not really knowing what the hell I was supposed to expect, and began trying to buzz somebody for help. I was a bit amazed when I began to hear the chopping of helicopter blades from outside. When I went back out, there it was, a rescue helicopter. I waved them down, and from there I was lifted off the mountain and to the hospital in the next closest town. I spent at least a week in the hospital before I was let go, having miraculously, a term that every nurse, surgeon, and elderly at the hospital repeatedly used to point out that I now found the word annoying, despite being the most accurate in my case. I'd sustained no major injuries. In that time I found out that the chopper came after the pilot supposedly made a distress call of some sort, before the line went completely dead and they couldn't re-establish contact. The official story is that Flight 249 entered turbulent weather and was struck by a bolt of lightning, bringing it to the mountain. Obviously, that never explained what happened with the other passengers, including the pilot who made the call that saved my life. I don't think there'll ever be a definitive answer on paper. I've seen internet searches about the missing passengers of Flight 249 and theories as to what happened. I won't go into them here, but suffice to say, they're completely inaccurate, as well as proof of what she told me on the plane. In each of these theories, one thing always stands out to me. None of the passengers are ever named except me. In other words, despite being a commercial airline, despite the fact that there should have been a flight list with names, none are ever mentioned. In other words, they're as good as non-existent, speculated about only because of the fact that I was found alone. When asked for my version of the story, I fed them the line that everything was fine until I went to sleep, only to wake up on the mountain. Not the best attempt at a lie, mind you, but I knew they wouldn't believe me about Irene, about the end of everyone's world and all. Well, they didn't before. This was all 2 weeks ago. I came back home after leaving the hospital, and for the past 2 weekends, I've taken to hiking the mountain where I was going to propose to Irene. I know you probably expected me to become a hermit for a while after something like what I've written. Trust me, I get it. But I understood why I couldn't do that. It was that kind of life that almost cost me my existence as a whole. Almost cost Irene's, too. Thinking back to the plane, I realized what she meant. I'd gotten on the plane because I couldn't handle life here at home without her, so I tried to run away to forget. In doing so, I almost couldn't stop it from eating me whole, the same way it did to her all those years ago. She saved me, though. She got me to be strong like she always had, and I could keep her memory alive, happily, instead of drowning myself in it. This last weekend, coming up to the spot on the mountain where she disappeared 3 years ago, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the ring I'd meant to give her. I'd never gotten rid of it, always carrying it with me. Taking it out of the box, I placed it on the spot where she was. I love you, Irene, now and forever, through heaven and through hell. I'm the best man I can be because of you. The only things I can say to you are, thank you, and will you marry me?